Week 2 of college football is underway. No games on Thursday. We had a couple games, 3, counted them, 3 on Friday night. We'll get to the scores and the recaps and so forth here at the Voice of College Football. For those of you who have been watching me for quite some time, you know that year after year after year, show after show after show, and there have been thousands at this point, I'm late all the time. Not a lot, not late by a lot, but late. But I got to say, believe it or not, this contraption over my right shoulder, actually not that itself, but what is connected to it, that's the reason I'm late this entire season. It's like a wrestling match with my laptop, but I can't complain. It was built in 2010. So it's a 14-year-old MacBook that is powering our logo here on the monitor, and it is like a 20-minute wrestling match each and every show. So we'll do something about that at some point. We appreciate your contributions. Wink, wink, here at the Voice of College Football. All right, Amazon links in the description section of all the videos. 3 games tonight. We will get to the scores. Indiana throttled somebody. I couldn't even tell you who. It was 35-0 last I checked. It was an inferior foe that they should not be playing. Not at least 3 of them in the non-conference. Also, last I checked, as I was watching this game, Northwestern had the football after a punt. They had a 3-point lead, 13-10, with about 9 minutes left in the game at home against Duke. That was the game I wanted to see tonight. And we'll have to check the score in the other game because I believe BYU held off SMU. The last I saw there was 15-12 late. But we apparently have a special guest that I was unaware of, Mr. Corey Bratta from the Hawkeye of the Storm.
I can't talk to you very long, Mark, because I'm focused in on this Northwestern Duke game. I'm trying to figure out why you're going live before the end of this awesome ACC versus Big Ten showdown.
Well, for one thing, I thought the game was at 8, which would have gotten me on here an hour earlier. Then once I saw it was 9, I was like, seriously, I'm going to be on after that game, and it's going to be like 12:30. So, yes, I'm here. Let's just put it that way.
We got quite a game here, 13-10. It's a defense. Can we go back to last week? It seems like through the first 2 weeks, now I know we've only had 3 games, but is it just me, or are there more low-scoring games? Are there more defensive contests?
I'd have to think about it.
I know this is anecdotal, but Notre Dame A&M is a perfect example. Like, that game was a great top 25 matchup, but like no points. And I know this is not a top 25 matchup, but it is a matchup against contrasting P4 schools. And This is extremely low scoring. And this is also a Northwestern team that gave up 38 to Duke a year ago. I know it's a different Duke team without Mike Elko, but this would be this would be a good win for the Big Ten. I know that you're going to laugh at that, but you lose by 20 plus last year, on the road to the same team. I know they're different.
It looks like I'm laughing.
No, you're not laughing. Some people will laugh at that because they say Duke is crap and blah, 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 blah. Well, we don't know, but yeah, I think we all guess that Duke's going to take a drop this year without Elko.
Yeah, well, we have to guesstimate where these teams are, and then we have to rate the performances. Yeah, if this was Ohio State beating Duke by a 3-point margin in the fourth quarter, yeah, that wouldn't matter. It would be a garbage win, but we're talking about Northwestern.
But I even mean for the conference, right, Mark?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, for the conference.
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about these cross-conference games, I think these are the games that are most interesting, at least to me. Not that Ohio State or now Oregon's in the Big Ten. Ohio State, Arizona, or Ohio State, USC. Now USC's in the Big Ten.
Everybody's in the Big Ten now.
Yeah, exactly. Ohio State, Texas. How about that one? Not that game doesn't matter, but I'm intrigued by, frankly, BYU-SMU. Now, that's Big 12 ACC. That's an intriguing game. I didn't watch that one, but here's another example of a low-scoring game. And by the way, let me express some level of disappointment in you again for the second time this week, Mark. I'm disappointed that you came on the air and the first thing that came out of your mouth was, I don't know who Indiana played. You ought to know who Indiana's opponent was.
Well, if I was concerned about the perception of my football knowledge, I would have checked before I said that. But I think I've gained a
No,
little bit of trust with the viewer here, so I'm not that concerned with Indiana. I know that their schedule is horrible. They played FIU last week, and they're playing 3 cream puffs, and this is just another one of them.
the reason I bring that up is because Western Illinois is obviously a key element to the history and heritage of the one and only Coach Don Patterson. He is the winningest coach in Western history. And for people who have been critical of Don Patterson for a variety, I had somebody not that long ago, if he knew what he was talking about, he'd be the head coach of Iowa. The crap like that. Let me just say, that is a horrid program right now. That's a horrid program. Look at that. This is the first-year head coach at Indiana, and they what do they do to the Leathernecks? 77-3. I mean, and I don't think Don would mind. I won't repeat what he said. I won't because I do think that what I know Western Illinois means a lot to him, but I can tell you quite frankly, he is so disappointed in where that program has went. It is a disgrace. That program is an absolute disgrace, and it's been a disgrace since he left, Mark. So for people that don't realize that, he did a heck of a job at Western Illinois to be winning conference championships in the best conference in the FCS at that program. I mean, that's like the equivalent. I don't know how you equate that to the Big Ten. That'd be like Northwestern or, well, I don't even know a better. Northwestern would probably be a good equivalent. They are horrible.
Well, I got to say that I didn't see 77-3. It was like 35-0 the last I saw this score. And yes, you know that I've got all the respect in the world for Coach Don Patterson. Western Illinois, I did not realize that was Indiana's opponent tonight. I did not see, obviously, one play of the game. I just assumed Indiana was going to win and that it would not be worth watching. I didn't know that it would not be worth watching to that extent.
Yeah, and apparently Jordan Love just got seriously hurt in the final seconds of his game against the Eagles. I just got an alert on that, so that will be a storyline to follow. But anyways, so yeah, that program's a disgrace, and to me, that is just all the more reason to have a lot of respect for what Coach Patterson was able to accomplish in what used to be called the Gateway Conference and is now the Missouri Valley Conference. But yeah, if Northwestern pulls this game out, solid win against an ACC opponent. To me, another game tomorrow that will be riveting to follow will be another rematch from last year, and that's Kansas-Illinois, because nobody is picking Illinois in that game. Illinois got boat raced a year ago against the Jayhawks. So, hey, I mean, to me, again, maybe the national pundits won't be looking at those games, but Duke ran away with this thing a year ago. Northwestern can turn the table and win this year. Same thing with Illinois. That'd be a good pair of wins for the Big Ten Conference. And I think some of those wins that, when you're talking about quality of conference, comparing the Big Ten and the ACC later on in the year, you go back to some of those middling matchups at times to talk about, strength top to bottom with these different leagues. So I'll be intrigued to see how this one finishes. But it does seem, going back to my original comment, it does seem like there are lower scoring games. Not just Notre Dame, Texas A&M, Duke-Northwestern, BYU-SMU. Mark, weren't there some other games last week that were real low scoring?
North Carolina, Minnesota.
Yes, North Carolina, Minnesota. Thank you. We're talking Power 4 matchups. I mean, there were a lot of blowouts, don't get me wrong, but these games against Power 4 versus Power 4 are low scoring games.
Yeah. I've not added it up to compare it against other seasons, but it appears that way. And I will say that if anyone, including myself, who loves to compare the conferences, and once we get the good batch of non-conference games played in later September, I'll be doing all those metrics and analysis. If we are truly making a comparison between the Big Ten and the ACC, then the Big Ten is in trouble. There should be no comparison between the two conferences.
About head-to-head comparison, I'm talking about when you're comparing the SEC and the Big Ten. By the way, Duke just missed
You said the ACC.
Like a 30.
Yes, the SEC absolutely will make that comparison. Hopefully, there's no comparison between the Big Ten and the ACC. Not that I'm rooting for either one, of course. I'm a neutral guy here, just covering college football, but there better not be a comparison there. And there better not be I got to think that the only power matchup between those two conferences would be from the ACC champion making the playoffs and possibly running into a Big Ten team.
By the way, Duke just missed like a 30-yard field goal wide right.
Okay.
Would have tied the game. They just missed a 30-yard field goal. And the Northwestern students that are there are going absolutely nuts. So Mike Wright got the ball back. He's not had a good day. 17-22, $141, and 1 interception. And yet they have the ball with 5 minutes to go. Duke does have all 3 timeouts, so they can get this ball back.
17-22. An Iowa quarterback would take that.
17-32.
Oh, okay.
17-32. So the other Power 4 matchup, week 1.
Yep. There are tons of them. Corey, you with us? I think we lost Corey.
You got me back?
There, we got you.
Apparently, I can't go off. Apparently, I can't go off of this. I can't go off of this without losing my connection here, apparently. So I got to stay on the StreamYard screen. Let me pull it up on my tablet here. I know this is exactly what you wanted. As soon as you logged on for a live show, you wanted me to come on here and go on a tangent.
I wanted to be ridiculed for being disappointing you again. And I wanted to, of course, be told that I should have been covering Western Illinois tonight. And now this. Sure.
So Virginia Tech, Vanderbilt.
I'll also remind you real quick before you squeeze that next comment in that it was like a week or two ago that somebody brought up something to us on the Iowa show concerning national pundits. And you called me a national pundit. And then you said that the national pundits are not paying attention, most likely to Illinois, Kansas. But this guy right here, I'm going to be all over that game. Of course, I'm going to be covering Kansas and Illinois.
By the way, last week, Mark, Northwestern 13-6 over Miami, Ohio.
Yes.
And by the way, that same Western Illinois team gave up 54 to Northern Illinois a week ago. So that should give you an idea about how bad Western is. And let me just look here. You're right. And there were a few. I mean, hey, Houston scored 7 against UNLV.
Yep.
Now, I didn't realize UNLV was picked to win the Mountain West. I know you're not a big G5 guy, but
Boise State picked by many. But when you say that they're picked by whom?
I looked up the preseason poll. They were number 1.
Okay. All right.
I'm pretty sure.
I picked Boise State myself. We'll see what Phil Steele had to say about it.
Let's see. Preseason poll in the Mountain West. Official preseason poll from Jesse Kurtz of the Mountain West Network. Apparently, that's what they put. This is on the official Mountain West website.
Okay.
You're right. Okay, this poll. Maybe I saw it wrong. This poll does have Boise. UNLV got 4 first place votes.
Okay.
Okay.
Phil Steele has Boise State. He's got UNLV 3rd.
Okay. Well, that's a pathetic loss for the Big 12. I know Houston's down, but
they're probably the worst team in the Big 12 and maybe the worst team in college football in the power conferences. Maybe.
UCLA scored 16 against Hawaii.
Yeah, 16-13. There's another one.
Oregon.
24-14. Yeah.
And that's an Oregon team that's typically scoring in the 70s and 80s week 1, right?
Against those kind of teams. Yep.
So that's low scoring. Let's see. I mean, again, there's plenty more games that were
Michigan
higher scoring variety.
Michigan State FAU is 16-10.
Yes. Hey, Georgia Tech, Florida State. I consider that a low scoring game. 24-21.
24-21. Yeah, in these days.
And what was the other one I was thinking of?
Boston College, Florida State was only 28-13. 41 points.
Yeah, what was the other game I was thinking of? Iowa State, North Dakota.
Iowa State, North Dakota. Yeah, 24 total points. Duke only beat Elon 26-3.
Yes.
That's a
and
low game.
There was another game that ended up very late with some garbage points. Now I lost it. Which game it was?
Michigan, Fresno State?
Yes, that's the one I was thinking of. Michigan, Fresno State was very low scoring through most of it.
Yes.
So I could be totally off on that. Maybe that's not a deviation from the norm, but
it seems
just feels like they're. Yeah. But I mean, again, for every one of those we're naming, there's 6 others that are being scored in the 40s and 50s. But you expect that when you got all these FBS versus FCS games and G5 versus, P4 games.
Look at,
you had Ole Miss over Furman 76-0.
Sure. Well, half the SEC played high school teams and beat them 70-0. Look at the USC LSU game. That over-under was 66, and that was a 23-20 game.
The USC what?
LSU game. USC played LSU.
Okay. Yeah, and you said, what was the over-under?
66.
Ooh, okay. There's another good example. Now there are, like they said, it's exceptions. How about, we haven't talked about, I got a friend / client who is a big Hawkeye fan, and he introduced me to somebody that works with him. We had a meeting this week, and he's a big Texas Tech fan.
52-51.
Yeah, over Abilene. That's Carson May's current school, Mark.
Okay.
You know who Carson May is, right?
I do.
You're a big Carson May fan, aren't you?
I've known who he has been for a long time, since he was in high school.
You've known who he is. All right. Well, that's a start, knowing who they are. You really can't be friends with somebody until you know who they are. You know what I'm saying?
I don't know where we're going with that, but
hey, let's
get back to the scores.
How about Wisconsin, Western Michigan?
Okay, 28-14.
Yeah. So, anyways, all right. You got a lot of callers in line here, Mark?
We've got one in line.
All right.
So you obviously are going to be all over Iowa State, and can we say that is this is going to be the most important Cy-Hawk game in the history of these two programs?
It's fun. I watched your preview. See, I actually watch your content, unlike you with mine. I watched your preview, and I heard you make that statement, and I'm not disagreeing with it, but I think it's a hard thing to really estimate, given the fact that, hey, I went back middle of the night last night. You ever have these nights, Mark, where you can't sleep, and so you turn on your phone and you watch an entire college football game? That's what I did last night. I watched Iowa and Iowa State 2021. We've talked about that game extensively in Ames.
Yep.
But let's not forget, that was 9 versus 10. That was a top 10 matchup. That goes further to what my argument to you the other day when you made this statement about this great win for USC over LSU. How about Iowa going on the road and beating the number 9 team in the country? How about that?
Nobody in their right minds thought either Iowa or Iowa State could come anywhere close to a playoff in 2021. You understand?
That's funny, because
point. There's a 12-team playoff now.
One was ranked 9 and one was ranked 10.
I don't care.
The Big 10 team went on the road and won in a rivalry game against the number 9 team in the country. And you're sitting here acting like USC's neutral site win over LSU. Are they even ranked in the top 20? Where are they ranked? They were ranked top 20, right?
First of all, you typically don't care about rankings, number one. Number two,
you're right.
This LSU team is better than that Iowa State team. And again, let me take you back to the week of that game. Did anyone on the American college football scene believe that those two teams were going to be playing for a playoff spot, possibly? Of course not. No.
Iowa State just came off of a Fiesta Bowl win.
Yeah, but
the year
nobody thought
before.
they were going to the playoff.
Well, that's your
Versus
opinion. I mean,
East.
that's your opinion. They were the ninth ranked
Okay,
team in the country. Iowa was
come on.
ranked 10. And oh, by the way, Iowa was undefeated and a top 3 team when they played Penn State a couple
Yes.
weeks later.
The last week in November, right?
No,
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 in
no.
September. Yes, in
Last week of
September.
no. Well, they were undefeated into what? Late October, actually. So let's get the facts straight. And this
Tomas
win
Forget.
this win by USC. Like, correct me if what month are we in? What month was last week? Or was that even September? Was that August? Oh, I'm sorry. It was August. You're right.
We're
It was
missing
September.
the complete point. Regardless of how good any of these teams are, there was a 4-team playoff in 2021. There is a 12-team playoff. Therefore, I stand by
What
my
does that okay?
statement. The
What
goal
does
of
that
these
have to do
teams,
with LSU and USC? What does
the
that have to do
goal
with
of
the
these
win by
teams,
USC?
that these wins are more significant.
Oh, okay. Hold on. I'm not arguing that. I want to make sure we're arguing the right thing. I'm
Not
not
because
arguing
they're
that.
better, not that because they're better teams, but because we've got an expanded playoff.
Okay. Well, you said to me that the win by USC over LSU was maybe the biggest win by the Big Ten non-conference, the best win, I should say, the
Yep.
best win
Yep.
non-conference in the last decade.
Yes.
That language, great catch by the way by Duke receiver here. It's under review. But when you say that, that does not give any implications of playoff uh, significance. That's just what's a better win regardless of
Okay.
playoff results. We can go back and evaluate wins and quality of wins regardless of the
Or
implications of such wins.
Corey, you're falling into the same mistake that a lot of my callers do on a regular basis. You've
No, I'm
changed the
not.
conversation. Well, let me explain. You've changed the conversation. We started with Iowa State, and you saying, I watched your video, Mark, and I don't necessarily disagree with you, but I can't completely agree with you that this is the most important game in the history of the series. And now we've switched to USC and LSU. So let's take
Well,
care of Iowa State. Do you understand my point?
I agree. Yes, I'm not going to.
There's a
I'm not
12-team
arguing that.
playoff.
I am not.
Okay, there's a
I'm
12-team
not arguing
playoff,
that.
and these teams could compete for a playoff spot.
Yes, I'm not arguing that.
Okay.
What
All right.
the reason I transitioned, what I said is when you made the comment, this might be the biggest Cyhawk game in the history of the series. I said I could see why you'd say that. However, 2021 should be at least in consideration. Okay, because it was 9 versus 10, regardless of how reasonable it was that either team was going to make the playoffs. Now, I could argue maybe it was at that point when you're a top 10 team, it's almost as reasonable as it is to talk about an Iowa State team now that's unranked being a playoff contender. Now, it's a different route because it's a 12-team playoff. You win the conference. I get it. My point in bringing up USC and UCL and LSU is going back to your comment about that being maybe the best win the Big Ten has had, not the best quality win the Big Ten's had in the last 10 years. What I'm simply saying is, how can you say that when you look at 3 years ago, an Iowa team going on the road and winning non-conference against the number 9 team in the country at the time? It's just your perception of LSU is better, and you have every right to feel that way. But I'm just saying, like, that's still just we are just projecting forward what we think LSU is going to be. But go back to what we thought Iowa State was in 2021. I don't think it's all that different. I don't think if anything, maybe we projected Iowa State a little better. I mean, heck, they were number 9 in the country in week 2. And you know how these rankings work, Mark. They're not early on, especially, they're not based on anything other than projections.
I guarantee that if we went back to my statement, I used the word probably for one thing. Correct?
Yeah.
Probably. I
Probably.
didn't say this is definitely the best win in a decade. I said probably. And I said, I also termed it a certain way in terms of saying this is the best win for the Big Ten non-conference regular season for a while, for a period of time. It's been a while. And I actually cut it short and I just asked the audience, when do you think the last bigger win for the Big Ten, aside from Ohio State? is in non-conference play in the regular season. The first one that came to mind for me was Michigan beat Notre Dame in 2019. That Notre Dame team finished 11-2 and were fringe top 10. The other thing about the Big 12, again, you pointed something else out. If whoever wins the Big 12, they are going to the playoff. We know this. They have a automatic spot. In 2021, there were two really good teams playing for a Big 12 championship, and they didn't make the playoff because they didn't have a good enough record, and they went 11-2. Baylor won the Big 12, and they did not go to the playoff in 2021. That's how exclusive it was just one season ago, and it's not anymore.
So I think that's our big divide right now on our debate here is,
yes,
are we talking about one of the Big Ten's biggest wins or one of the Big Ten's best wins? Because there's a difference. When you say, okay, this is the biggest win since, if I say this is the biggest win since, then I am thinking implications. I'm thinking, okay, what significance does this have for trophies, for titles, for playoff berths? If I say best win, I may have a terrific win that ends up not really doing anything.
True.
Go back to 2018, Iowa beat, or excuse me, 2008, behind Sean Green's big day. They beat Penn State, and it knocked Penn State out. Great win, but that win didn't do anything for Iowa. They ended up in the Outback Bowl, but it's still one of the best wins of the Kirk Ferentz era.
Yes. So let me make that distinction. I will stand on this being one of the best wins for the Big Ten in the last decade, non-conference regular season. However, biggest win, that remains to be seen. If USC goes 8-4, 7-5, and is a non-factor, well, then it was just a nice win for them in September, and it means nothing on the national landscape.
Yeah, I can stand by that. Let me ask you this. Given our discussion, if that game, just best, if that game, LSU and USC was one of the best wins for the Big Ten in the last decade, would the Iowa win at number 9 Iowa State in 21 be in that conversation for non-conference? No, non-bowl game, non-conference games, because that's where this discussion started.
Well, depending on how long this list is. Like if this list is, we're talking about like the top 5, probably not. If we're talking the top 10 or more.
Do you see where I have a problem with that when we don't know what LSU
is going to rankings in September?
Well, but we don't know what LSU is going to do. You're basing it on a projection, and I'm basing it on what they were at the time, just like you're basing it on.
And guess what? You know what?
You see the problem?
Listen, just a second, Corey. So the game that you're bringing up, and I'll tell you the 2 other games that people brought up that answered that question. It was a Wisconsin win against LSU. You also brought up that game. Wisconsin beat LSU at Lambeau Field in 2016. And then the Michigan win over Notre Dame in 2019 that I just brought up. Those were nice wins, but that Michigan team went 9-4. They didn't factor into the playoffs or a national championship. That Wisconsin team in 2016, they went to the Big Ten championship game. They were a nice team, but they went to the Cotton Bowl, and they were a decent team. They were a nice team. They finished 10-3, 11-3, and they were a nice team, but they weren't huge victories because those teams lost games. So even those wins that are being put up against the comment that I'm making about LSU and USC, even those didn't turn out to be monumental wins for the Big Ten. My point is that there aren't many mammoth regular season games by the Big Ten that are won that turn out to be consequential.
But Mark, you're going right back to biggest versus best.
Yeah. And you're bringing up both. So I'm arguing both.
No, I'm not bringing up biggest. I agree that Iowa State in hindsight didn't have what wasn't one of the biggest wins for the conference because it didn't do anything.
Okay. So we're going back to best. All right.
Yeah.
The best wins for the Big Ten in the past decade. Okay.
Yeah, just best quality wins. Wisconsin LSU has to be on the list. Michigan Notre Dame has to be on the list. USC LSU. I'm just saying, you're right. And there have been, listen, you know this, Michigan has scheduled weekly in the non-conference. There have been a lot of weak schedules.
Sure. 3 straight years. Awful. Yeah.
And
Ohio State has those schedules this year. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just saying you're right. Iowa State didn't finish as high as their number 9 ranking. They're not even close to as high as their number 9 ranking would have, had us believe they may have a chance at finishing that year at the time. However, if we're evaluating it the way we're evaluating LSU now, you see my point? We're
I see
evaluating
your
LSU
point.
based
We
on
haven't
one
played the
weekend.
season yet. Sure. I see your point. I'm paid to project. I'm projecting. Yes, LSU could be 5-7 this year.
Well, what was that? What was Iowa State in 2021?
7-6.
And did they lose the Liberty Bowl?
They lost to Clemson in a bowl game, whatever that
Oh,
bowl
that was
game
the
is in
Cheez-It Bowl.
Florida. The Cheez-It Bowl. Yes.
Yep.
Brock Purdy's last play of his collegiate career was gaining a first down and backtracking
then going back.
and losing the first down. Yes.
Such a Brock Purdy thing to do.
He also threw a pick six on a batted ball at the line that a defensive lineman
batted it or
touchdown. No, it's a very odd batted play. Like it was double batted, and then the Clemson defensive line took it for a touchdown. So it was kind of an unlucky loss for Iowa State.
Do you remember when TCU sacked him? By the way, real quick, 18 seconds left, 21-yard field goal attempt for Duke, and it's good. So it's 13-13.
Man.
And it looks like we're headed to overtime. See,
I would just be coming on right now. I'd have to wait overtime if I was playing by your rules.
So what is this $100 for? Since this going to overtime, do I get $100? Is that what's going on here?
Well, that's a little confusing, I guess, since we're tracking the Duke-Northwestern game. But no, it's basically I said, I'm going to be on here for an hour unless we get $100 in Super Chats. Then we go to overtime with $100. That's the deal Monday through Friday for our 10 a.m. show is that for me to extend the show past an hour, that we go the Super Chat route. Which
I thought it meant that since this final game is going into overtime, that we all get $100.
Yeah, I can see where that would be misconstrued. Well, Kyle Pickett is taking care of this. Look at that.
Wow. Kyle, type in youtube.com/from the Hawkeye of the Storm.
I knew something like that was coming up.
We love you, Kyle. Come over to our channel.
Kyle. It's very nice of you. I wasn't feeling too up to going a second hour, but I'm obligated. I'm feeling you've energized me, Corey. You've got me fired up over this.
I haven't been looking at the chat because I knew when I started debating you that people not to say that you're right or that you're wrong, but people are going to come to your defense more often than not. So I'm sure I'm getting absolutely ripped and just absolutely torched in the chat, which is fine. What was I was something else before I let you go. You got somebody else waiting. Yeah, I totally blanked. I have no idea what I was going to say.
Okay, I'm just going to clarify one more time real quick. This is just what was going through my mind. I'm watching USC pull off this exciting game against LSU, and I think this LSU team is flawed, but they're still a talented team, really good team, top 15 type team as I see it right now. This may be disproven. And just the way I think, you know how I think, I've got a pretty encyclopedic knowledge of scores and games from the past. And I just started to go through the Rolodex of Big Ten non-conference wins. And I'm thinking, wow, there really aren't many that are that substantial. And then I thought, well, Ohio State beat Notre Dame the last 2 years. They beat Oklahoma, a team that won the Big 12 and went on to win the Sugar Bowl in 2016. So take Ohio State out of it. The rest of the Big Ten, and I'm just going through these games thinking, wow, this is about as good as it's gotten over the last decade. And that was just the impetus of me making that statement.
Yeah, and like I say, I'm not actually arguing that you could be right. I have a hard time evaluating something that's already occurred and seeing a season out versus a win after week one, without knowing more about this team.
Like even Penn State hasn't played and won those kind of games.
Yeah, they beat West Virginia.
Yeah,
Isn't West Virginia going to finish like 11-1?
I
I
heard
read
that
that.
somewhere.
Yeah, I was going to say I heard that somewhere.
I heard that
So
somewhere.
think about it. If West Virginia finishes 11-1, Mark, if West Virginia finishes 11-1, that Penn State win this year becomes one of the biggest wins the Big Ten's had in the
Yes.
last decade.
Well, it will be number one. It will be number one. There you go. I failed miserably in not identifying that game. Absolutely.
And if Duke finishes, well, let's see there. Yeah, if Northwestern wins this game and then Duke finishes 11-1, this will be one of the biggest wins in
That will be
last
one of
decade of the Big Ten.
yeah. Illinois, Kansas. Kansas goes on, finishes 11-1.
I just gonna say I don't know if you and I have talked about this, but Don Patterson brought it up. The situation with Northwestern's field. Are you aware of this?
Sure.
Because they're undergoing the rebuild.
They had a
It's
lengthy
like
article in The Athletic about it that I read. It was very interesting.
it's like a high school field.
Yeah, if that.
It's incredible, and you got this on Fox Sports 1. It's just mind-boggling. So,
I would love to
anyways,
see it. I would, if it was more convenient, I would like to go to a game and actually see it. It's right on the water. I'm sure it's beautiful. They had all sorts of issues trying to figure out how to get people in there and out. And they're going to have to deal with that for more than one season. It's maybe 3. I don't remember.
well, I'll tell you what, it's fascinating seeing pine trees and regular trees right next to the stands. You
Yeah,
just don't,
cool. Yeah,
you just don't see that anywhere. So,
love that.
anyways, all right. Well, I don't know what else I was going to say, and again, I'm probably getting on people's nerves at this point. So, I'll let you go. If I think of it, I may throw it up in the chat. But
Well, before we let you go, we'll remind everyone Iowa State post game with Corey and Coach Don Patterson, and as I stated, the biggest game in the history of this rivalry. So you want to catch Corey for post game with, again, Coach Don Patterson on from the Hawkeye of the Storm, everyone.
and
I'm
I've got
not missing a play of that game. I'm going to be locked in on that game.
Okay, I've got just so you people haven't seen it. On my channel, I've got Iowa winning 27-14.
27.
Is that a lot of points, Mark?
That's a lot of points for those Hawkeyes.
Yeah. Well, hey, they scored 20 a year ago, and it was a pick 6 for Sebastian Castro. I watched that game last night as well.
Very good. It just further cements your Hawkeye expert knowledge.
That's right.
When is the last time Iowa scored 30 points in a Big Ten game?
In a Big Ten game?
Yes.
Well, they scored 50 something against Maryland back in 21.
21. Okay, that's probably it.
Remember that game on the road, the 7 turnover game for Maryland?
Because I remember we did a big pregame preview, and that was a Friday night game, right?
Yeah, and I did a post-game show till like 3 a.m. That's the same night I had a guy call in about 3 a.m. and I said something about Mark Rogers, and he paused, and all of a sudden he said, "Who's Mark Rogers?" And I just burst out laughing. I don't know why. I don't know why I found it so funny. It just made me laugh because it was 3 a.m. and some rando dude that I'd never heard of called in. It just was funny to me. So yeah, that probably was the last time they scored 30 points. No, let's see. They scored. Well, they shut out Rutgers, but I don't think they reached 30.
22.
I think it was like 21. 22. Okay, 22.
Nothing. A lot of field goals in that one. Yeah.
I don't. It's probably Maryland.
The game you went to at Purdue was what, like 23-7 or something like that?
Yeah, and well, you know what, Mark? They scored. I think they were in the 30s against Northwestern at home. Was that in 22?
Yeah. What was that game? 30, 31-10, 30, 33-10? something like that. 33-13, something like that.
So yeah, I think they scored in the 30s that
Okay.
day.
All right. I am not giving the Hawkeye offense enough credit. Sorry, Brian Ferentz, wherever you are. I'm sorry. I apologize.
Let's confirm that real quick. 33-13.
Okay.
There you go. How about that? Can you believe that, Mark?
I can.
33-13. And I'm looking at the other games, and I'm not seeing. Scored 26 against Michigan State last year.
Yeah, 26-16.
Yeah. Scored 27 against Rutgers and 22 as well.
The last time they may have scored, other than the Maryland game, didn't they put up 41 against Indiana?
They put up 30. They put up 33 against Illinois in 2021.
Okay, 33-23, right?
Yeah, you got it.
The Indiana game where they had a long touchdown run, 34-7.
Yeah.
What was that?
Those the day of the 2 pick sixes from Riley Moss?
Yeah.
34-6.
34-6. Okay.
That was the week before that Cyhawk game we've been talking about.
Was that the one where you went to the game early? You were out there at 5 a.m.?
Yes. Yes. You're right again. Yeah.
See, that's your best argument. You haven't even used your best argument, is that College Game Day was there. And if College Game Day is there, then we know it's a big game.
Well, ironically enough, College Game Day was also there in 2019 for that delayed game that was on Fox. That was kind of a weird situation, I thought.
2019, were the teams that good?
Iowa
went what? 10-3. Iowa State in 2019. That was
2019
good season. I think they went
7-6.
6.
Iowa was ranked 15th. 15 in the country.
Iowa State lost to Notre Dame in a bowl game.
Yeah, it was 18-17. That's the game with the special teams gaff, the punt.
Yep.
The guy ran into his own guy. It's like a 6-hour game with 2 lightning delays. Hey, Iowa, do you remember? Hey, can I ask you one more score question before I let you go?
Sure. If
you get this,
okay.
If you get this, what am I going to do?
Kyle Pickett's going to give another $100. I'm just kidding, Kyle. Kyle, we appreciate it.
That's a win-win for me. Hey, give me the score: Iowa, Illinois.
Okay.
November 17th, 2018 in Champaign.
Oh my word. I have no 2008. I really don't know.
I'll give you a hint.
Okay. I don't remember that game.
Epinesa had a big game. You would probably never get this score. This is one of the most bizarre scores in Hawkeye history.
Because it's an odd score?
Yes, very much so.
Well, people are already putting it in. Was that truly? I vaguely remember that. Was it 63-0?
Yes.
Okay, Doc put it in the. I remember that. Yes.
63-0.
That's right.
How do you listen? How do you give up 63 to a Brian Ferentz offense and also nothing and at home? That was in Champaign. I mean,
wow.
Let's look at here. Let's see. They were in Illinois actually won time of possession. Think about that. They actually won time of possession.
That Illinois team had to be awful. 2018.
Oh my goodness.
That was Lovey.
Yeah, I feel bad for Lovey. They were 2 of 17 on third down in that game. AJ Bush, 12 of 28 through the air for 82 yards and 2 interceptions. That's a Deacon Hill stat line right there, if I've ever seen one.
I do remember that score. I'm sure I watched next to none of it.
Nate Stanley had 178 yards, 3 touchdowns. Mekhi Sargent, 121 yards on 17 carries, 2 touchdowns. Yeah, AJ Epinesa, 1.5 sacks, led all defenders with 5 tackles for loss, or excuse me, 5 total tackles, 1.5 sacks. Let's see here.
Folks are calling in right now or tuning in, and they can't believe that at 1 a.m, leading into week 2, that we are reading stats from a 2018 Iowa-Illinois game.
Okay, I'm going to let you go now. But let me just say this. Northwestern just scored a touchdown. Duke has responded with a touchdown. And just moments ago, Duke snuck the extra point inside the left upright, barely, to hang on and send it to double overtime. So we're taking a break here on Fox Sports 1, and we'll be back with double overtime.
Corey, thanks for being here. Have a good post game tomorrow.
All right. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Corey. All right, let's keep it moving here at the Voice of College Football. So we're going overtime thanks to Kyle Pickett. And I don't know what to think about. So again, Kyle, we appreciate you. You know that. So I don't know what to think about or what I need to do in response to the second donation here. But thank you, Kyle. Thank you so much for that. Is the new $20. Well, in this economy, I know that it means, it truly means $100 on your end. But yes, on the receiving end, unfortunately, I'll buy some groceries. But thank you so much for that, Kyle. You're very kind. Maybe we'll start a collection for a new laptop, so I'm not like 10 minutes late for every show trying to fire this thing up because it's taking like 25 minutes now. But good stuff from Corey. And last week, this gentleman donned his North Carolina cap with the Heels winning the big game against Minnesota. And now the 77 spot.
Absolutely. Indiana with a fantastic performance. But before I get into this game, I do have to say one thing. Corey, I love Corey to death. Me and him, that one chat we had on the 24-hour show last year about Scott Frost, I'll never forget it. Absolutely hilarious. He is so good at debates. It's hilarious. But, hey, you know, Mark, with you saying best versus biggest game, we all make mistakes sometimes because Corey said when he first came on the show that he didn't have long to talk to you because he wanted to watch the Northwestern game, and he talked to you for almost an hour. So we all make mistakes sometimes.
Yeah, I give a lot of leeway on these calls, but especially to Corey because we've got an Iowa channel because of Corey. So.
Oh, Corey's fantastic. I just thought it was funny. I mean, because at the end of the day, whether you said best or biggest, it doesn't really matter. It was a huge win. I don't care. Like, it was a huge win for USC, and like that's all you could say. It was a big win. I just thought it was funny. Corey's great, but
I use the word probably, and I do challenge college football fans to dig up big non-conference wins by Big Ten teams in the last 10 years. There aren't that many.
No, there really isn't. I mean, you're right. Absolutely. I mean, I say probably and if and all those sorts of words all the time. And people are like, why don't you stick to a prediction? Well, I'm like, I am. I'm just saying if you say it's the best or number one or whatever, then more people are going to argue with you than if you say probably, because that gives you more leeway when saying a statement. I mean, that's just how it works. If you say probably or one of, then you're comparing it to other games without saying that it's the best. Like, you're right, Mark. Absolutely. Corey had a valid argument, but I agree with you. I mean, on like what you said, there was nothing wrong with what you said at all.
And it's also a bigger game, not necessarily because the teams are better, but because we now have a 12-team playoff. So the game,
it makes every single game less significant in a way because of the fact you can drop a game and still have a shot, but it also builds your resume up, kind of like in college basketball, toward making the playoffs the same way. Absolutely.
Yeah. I would argue in a sense that it makes those games more significant.
It does make them more significant, but it makes each individual game less significant. Where it's like the Michigan-Ohio State game last year was the most significant game in that rivalry's history, basically, it felt like. Because whoever lost was not going to get into the playoff. Whereas now, the loser of that game, if both teams run undefeated, is going to make the playoff still. That's what I meant.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
in a 14 playoff,
Mhm.
would we be looking at Tennessee, North Carolina State tomorrow night thinking this is a big game? I don't think anybody really is projecting Tennessee and NC State to make a 14 playoff.
Mhm.
But since we have a 12-team playoff, I think that's a big game.
Oh, it makes games like that kind of not the elite games, but more of like the really good games, the good to great games. It makes those games more important. It just makes the elite games less important because the
Yes.
loser of that game isn't going to be out of the playoff now.
Exactly.
That's the only thing that it hurts. Like Alabama, Georgia last year. Georgia's in the playoff in the SEC championship now. Whereas last year they weren't, and they should have been in the playoff. They were one of the 4 best teams.
That's why I say Iowa State tomorrow is the most
time. They
significant
lose to
game in
Bama
the history of that. Sorry, Jeffrey, to talk over you. You cut out there for about
Sorry about
15
that,
seconds.
my internet. But if literally with Georgia, if they lost to Bama in week 2 of the season, like, Alabama lost to Texas, Georgia probably gets back in if they beat Bama when they did. But it's just because they lost at the end of the season, which is unfortunate. But now with a 12-team playoff, all that's good. But I don't think they're making the 12-team playoff. But Indiana, with their best performance, literally, when it comes to scoring and when it comes to yards in a game of all time, program record, Indiana with 77 points. And I know Western Illinois has not won a game in 3 years. They're bad. I know they're bad. But can you believe that, Mark? I mean, they were favored by 42. They won by 74, and they probably could have won by more. Unbelievable. I think legitimately Indiana, we could say that they're decent. Like they're a decent team now. They're solid enough. They're not garbage anymore.
Yeah, I'll say something that I said last week to you, but I'll amplify it about 10 times, is that, these are not impressive wins just in terms of the wins themselves, that they beat these teams, but they just beat Akron on a missed field goal last year. Like this FIU game last year, they're winning that game, 28-23. They're winning this game again, even against an awful Western Illinois team. They probably would have won it like 42-10, something like that. They wouldn't have just completely blown them off the field.
Yeah, and the thing is that it wasn't even just the starters either. Like the bench came in and did good as well. Like Indiana played tons of running backs. They switched a ton of defensive guys out. And that's literally the only reason they gave up the field goal, was because they had the second team defense in some of them. And, but then they tightened down. Like Signetti got on them. I mean, like he's never smiling. Like he's always upset at him for something. Like he's not like going crazy or anything, but like he's got a stern look on his face. Like even though they won this game 77-3, like he still was saying, we need to do this better. We need to do that better. I know you can say that's coach speak. I get that. But he's not Tom Allen. Tom Allen, you remember this, Mark. Tom Allen celebrated the Akron win. He was running all over the field, going crazy. We won. We beat Akron. I'm like, what? You're happy about this? You should be you should be livid. Just blown away at what you've just seen. Like I was I came on, I called in Mark to the show after that game. And I said to you that I was absolutely disappointed with that performance. That's when I knew, this is not a good team. Legitimately not a good team. They should have lost to Akron, a missed field goal. It was one of the ugliest games that I've ever seen in my life. And he was celebrating it. He wasn't upset. He wasn't irritated. He was celebrating it like they won the Super Bowl. That's the moment that I knew he was going to get fired. Sadly enough.
Well, my take on those kind of situations is I would expect the coach to respect the opponent and basically say, okay, we value that we won the game. We played a good opponent, regardless of how bad they are. You just say that and basically say, we won the game. So we take our win and we move on and we take whatever we did positive. But our standard of play was not met tonight by any stretch. We made way too many mistakes. We weren't good enough. This isn't going to be good enough to win against the kind of teams that we're going to play going forward. So we are not happy with the way we played. We're happy that we won the game and we can move on, but we are not happy with the way we played.
Absolutely. Everything you just said, I agree with 100%. I mean, the thing with Tom Allen is when they beat Penn State with Penix's dive to the end zone, the 2-point conversion that's still debated to this day. Can't let Indiana have one big win, right? Like, it's got to be debated. Well, I get it, but still, right? Like, that was a huge win. And you had Tom Allen going crazy. And I'm like, this makes sense. This is a huge win. Against an accurate favored to beat. I think I cut out again. But a team that they were favored to beat by 20 points, you're celebrating the exact same way. It doesn't make any sense. And that's why people got frustrated with Tom Allen. I don't know why it keeps doing that on ESPN. It keeps doing it to me too.
It's doing it to other people.
Yes,
okay.
Because it's doing it
really
to me
annoying.
too.
And you can't click it off.
No. It's annoying. Like, I feel like my computer's gotten hacked.
That is crazy. Okay. At least it's not that I wanted to be doing it to other people, but I just thought there was something wrong with
No, you're good. It's nothing your computer's doing. It's been doing it to me. It's been doing it to other people I've known. ESPN's things just being really weird. I have no idea. Also, before I get off here, I do want to say that I don't know if anybody said it yet, but I did notice you got a haircut. That's good. It looks good. So
thank you. Good with the haircut.
You're welcome.
All right. Very nice. I won't need one for quite some time.
Yeah, that's always a good thing. I always pay attention to that, especially when people go a while without getting their haircut. I actually probably got to get mine done cut soon. But, like, yeah, then you don't have to worry about it for a while. That's fantastic. So, yeah, I just pointed that out. You know, you definitely want to, you know, show people you're paying attention. You know, well,
but Jeffrey, I did get some comments in the comment section of a few videos about they were all complimentary, but I got it tightened up. I walked out of there and I thought maybe it's a little short, but it grows back. It'll be fine.
Oh yeah. Whenever because I've had mine really short before, like almost to the point where it's like a buzz cut, and I don't ever like shave my hair off. Never do that, but it's been close before, and I'm like, I don't like this, but I'm like, it's gonna grow back. It's gonna grow back. We're all good, you know. So I'd rather it be a little bit too short and it can grow back than you got your hair cut and you didn't even cut it enough, and then it's grown back to the point you don't like it in like a month.
Exactly.
It's just get it all off.
If I get it cut to the point that I like it right that day, then 2 weeks later, I already want a haircut again. And I'm not one that goes to get my haircut often. I want to make that as infrequent as possible.
Absolutely. I will say, though, that I was talking with you last week that I was hoping my picks would improve this week. Well, they're starting off really poorly outside of Indiana. I picked BYU. Not BYU. I picked SMU to beat BYU, and I got that wrong. At BYU got it done. Happy for Kalani Sitake, but I wish I'd have picked BYU. Did you make a pick on that one?
I went 14-3 straight up last weekend, and this weekend I did not pick any of the Thursday or Friday games. Okay. Again, I just kind of got lazy, but I got to make my picks and release them, and everybody will see those along with Steve Dace's picks and Steve Merrill and Matt Zemek's. So we will have those released, and they'll be out there. But 14-3 straight up and 10-7 against the spread last weekend for me.
Okay, that's pretty good. That's better than what I did. I do worse with the spread. That's the thing. I do worse with the spread. I can pick games pretty good, but the spread, I got to get better at that. Well, I'm not good enough at that yet at all, but maybe eventually. But I got that game wrong because I picked SMU. Don't know why I said I picked BYU. I'm saying things backwards, but it is 1 a.m. And then the other game, I looked at it, and for whatever reason, I thought I picked Northwestern. I did pick Duke. So Duke survived. Okay. Malik Murphy tried to give the game away like 100 times, but they pulled through. So I got the Duke game right. So I was 2-1. So that's okay, I guess. But I thought I was 1-2 for a minute, but I was 2-1. I mean, the game was good. I will say that the two games tonight were pretty good. I know most people probably don't care about them, but they were pretty solid. The two games that mattered a little bit for most people. I mean, I think that Northwestern needed that game more than Duke did, just like BYU needed it more than SMU did. because the ACC is a little bit easier, right? Like they're going to have more chances to get 6 wins, whereas Northwestern, it's going to be harder for them to get 6 wins in the Big Ten. So I feel like Northwestern and BYU needed the wins more, and BYU at least got it done. But Northwestern falling short. Their field is really, really messed up. I will say that. I'm with you though. It's cool that it's right on the water. That's cool, but it's a messed up field though.
I love it. I love it. Now, if they were doing that permanently, then
Oh no,
obviously they'd get kicked out of the conference because they're not going to make any money with I think they've got all of 15,000 that they can accommodate.
Mhm.
It may not even be that many.
15,000
15,000 people, something like that.
Yeah, like a lot of people said, it's like a high school stadium. Ryan Field felt like that, but now this is even crazier. But I will say, I do have to ask, you do think Alabama's going to beat South Florida by more today than what they did last year? Because some people are still saying that it's going to be close. I'm like, Milroe did not play in that game last year. He's going to be playing this time. But with the voice of college football, I want to hear what Mark has to say about this game.
Well, of course, I usually reserve my picks for the people that get the picks, but I'm throwing them out there for everyone. So off the top of my head, I'm going to go 48-10 Bama.
Okay. See, the voice of college football thinks Bama. I'm saying that I don't understand why people still talk about that game. Milroe did not play in it. Every time I mention that Milroe did not play in that game, everybody keeps like, oh, he did. He played. No, he didn't. It's Stockholm syndrome. He did not play in that game. That's why it was close.
Yeah.
People forget. I'm like, you didn't even watch the game. You just saw the score. Bama sucks. Milroe. I'm like, okay. It cracks me up though.
People also need to understand that I think we got a dose of this last week is that DeBoer loves to throw the ball and work in the passing game, and he's a master at it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's going to lend to more points. Not that he's trying to rub it in on anyone, but I just think that they're going to operate their offense and just continue to throw and work on their offense because he's thinking about playing Georgia and Auburn on all these teams down the road. And so they just blasted Western Kentucky last week and continued to run their offense the entire game.
Yeah, I mean, I was surprised they won by as much as they did. I said last week I thought it'd be a little closer, just like I thought Indiana, Western Illinois would be a little bit closer, but I'm glad it wasn't. But I know you probably have a ton of callers behind you, but I will say, last thing, what games? I mean, what's the game you're looking forward to the most tomorrow? If it is Texas, Michigan, then makes sense. But if it's not that game, then what game are you looking forward to the most?
Yeah, so the obvious call is Texas, Michigan. That's the headliner. But I would argue, as I made this a topic the other day, that there are other games that are more important in a sense. If you, again, have that theory that, well, at least Texas is going to make the playoff anyway. They can lose this game and go 10-2 and make the playoff. I'm watching Texas, Michigan, of course, at noon. And I always have a second game that I have on.
A lot to choose from.
Yeah, there's a lot that are on the same level, like Georgia Tech, Syracuse, Arkansas, Oklahoma State. I've got a tough choice to make. It's a second game at noon. At 3:30, I'm all about Iowa, Iowa State. And then there's a lot of other, again, Auburn and Cal are playing, and there's a lot of secondary games that are just
Michigan State, Maryland, South Carolina, Kentucky.
It's probably going to start with Michigan State, Maryland. Then, yeah, South Carolina, Kentucky's there, and then the other game that I mentioned. Now, at night, I am clearly watching Tennessee, NC State, and Nebraska, Colorado. Those are the two games I'm watching. And then, unfortunately, I'm here late night because I do miss. That's the only thing about doing the late night show. I miss the late night games. I'd like to see Boise State, Oregon.
Oh yeah, that might be good, especially if Oregon has the issues that cropped up last week against Idaho. Because Boise's better than Idaho by far, so they're gonna have to play better to win.
And Washington State's playing Texas Tech late night. I'd like to see that game too.
Sneaky game, absolutely. I mean, it's so tough with those because. I'm up right now at 1 a.m. So I'll probably be awake to see it tomorrow night. But I mean, it's just so hard to stay up for these games. I'm telling you, I have my sleep schedule better and now football's back and it's ruined everything. I love football, but man, it's so tough sometimes. It's so tough. I mean,
Come on,
like
Come on,
literally, I've been
Jeffrey.
on with you before, like 1:30 or 2 a.m. in the morning, and then I gotta wake up to go to church. I'm like, it's worth it, but man, I'm tired.
Jeffrey, I'm an old man, and I get through these late nights with Saturday, and then I go to church in the morning, and I work on my top 25 that actually makes sense after the late night show. I stay up to like 5.
That's insane. I mean, I'm pretty close to you. I'm pretty close with that. But I mean, I know I'm like 30 years younger or whatever, 30, 35 years younger and everything. But still, it's not easy when you're young either. It's never easy. I mean, but it's whether you love what you do or you love and enjoy watching and talking college football. I mean, that's what makes it worth it. If you didn't love it, then you wouldn't do it. You just go to bed, but it is definitely worth it. And some people are like, well, I DVR the game. If you DVR the game or whatever people do now, just record it on their streaming service, you're not even gonna have time to watch it the next day if you got the NFL on. You know, like if you don't watch that, some people don't, then it's fine. But yeah, there's always stuff going on. It's crazy, but definitely can't wait for this week in college football. It's going to be fun. I agree with all the games that you said. I still think it's funny people are saying Colorado, Nebraska is better than Tennessee, NC State, though. I mean, the game might end up being better, but is it a better game?
No, they are not better teams. No, we've got Nebraska fans, and we've got people that are enamored with Deion Sanders. It might be a better game. We never know which game is going to be better, but Tennessee and NC State are collectively better teams than Nebraska and Colorado. It's not even
absolutely
that close.
I mean, there's an argument, and I mean an argument, that Georgia Tech, Syracuse could be better teams than Nebraska, Colorado. An argument, not saying they are, but that shows you that Nebraska, Colorado is not like a top 2 or 3 game in the sport. Just because being hyped to death because of Shadur, Deion, Rayola. No, it's not that good a game. I'll be watching it, but unless the Tennessee NC State game is a blowout, I'm not going to be watching most of that game. But it is what it is. I just always have to throw that in there. I know people love Deion. I like Deion, but it's hilarious. But thanks for taking my call, Mark. Hope you have a great rest of the show. Everybody like and subscribe to the Voice of College Football. He works till 5 a.m. You got to support him. That's hard work. He's got a couple hours on me. I usually sometimes 2, 3 a.m. and not 5, but he works hard for everybody loves college football, and he does absolutely great content every single day, usually.
I appreciate it, Jeffrey. Thank you so much. Good to see you, and enjoy the football.
You're welcome, Mark. Appreciate it a lot. And I don't know if we'll see Indiana scoring 77 again anytime soon, so I'm just enjoying it right now while it lasts.
Phenomenal. I didn't know Taven Jackson was still on the team. I see he's still the backup quarterback.
Yeah, he definitely stayed. I guess he thought he had a shot at the job, but I mean, he has a better chance to start at Indiana than he does at Tennessee, like where he came from. So, and Rourke only has a year left, so maybe he'll be the starter next year.
Good stuff. Thank you, Jeffrey. Have a good night.
You too.
We see that about 250 people are watching the live stream total, about 80 here on YouTube. Folks, if you're watching on Twitter, X, please join us on the live stream here on YouTube, because you can interact with all these fine people like Adam and Sid Irish and Jackson and Michael and Ralph's here. Good crowd tonight, and a bunch of other good people that I missed. And Tim and Matt just finished up the USC live call-in show. So when you get done here, check out what they already did in talking Tim USC football. Of course, after the big win against LSU, they've got Utah State coming up late night on Saturday. Also, we see Duke beat Northwestern 26-20 in overtime. And I got to say that when we're done here, I'm going to watch like the last 2 drives of that game and overtime. I just want to see what happened and how Northwestern blew this game, because it's not like they blew a 2-touchdown or 3-touchdown lead, but they seem to have had control. All right, let's keep it rolling here at the Voice of College Football, and our guy Jackson letting everyone know we're gunning for 100,000 subs here. So let's get there. All right, we got Dr. Buckeye David on the line. David, we can't hear you.
Sorry, Mark, had the mute button on. Yep. I said whoever had Indiana minus 73 tonight's feeling pretty good, right?
Yeah, they were able to cover that one. Yes. Look at that. That's impressive.
Gosh. I was really hoping Northwestern would have pulled that out, and good run of football here for the Big Ten in the Smart Kids Bowl. Battle of neurosurgeons there between Duke and Northwestern.
These two like each other. They schedule each other every year.
Well, yes.
They play each other more often than they do conference teams. They play every year.
I'm telling you, smart kids of the world unite, right, Mark?
That must be the way it is. They need to get Vandy into the series, the
Yeah.
round robin.
Yeah, get a Vandy Stanford tilt
Yep.
to kind of,
Get
balance that
going.
out,
And now I believe that the Big Ten is 0-2 against the ACC, right?
Yeah, good start though for the Big Ten though last week. Big Ten people were puffing their chest up a little bit last week. Well, everybody's. Yeah, I think
It was
people were.
okay.
Well, people were. The biggest win for the Big Ten, that USC win, Mark. I mean,
Yeah, well, that's by far the biggest win. And then Penn State beat West Virginia, and they didn't just beat them; they took care of them pretty easily. Those were the two big wins. And I don't put a whole lot in Minnesota losing to North Carolina. Minnesota is probably one of the 3 or 4 worst teams in the Big Ten, and North Carolina is going to be better than that in the ACC.
Well, I see. I'm not trying to burst the bubble of US. Well, first of all, of two of the biggest wins, which were Penn State and USC, I'm not trying to burst the bubble of either the Penn State or USC people, but I'm going to go ahead and burst the bubble. I expected, and I think I may have told you this, that LSU was going to drop back a little bit this year. By the way, nice Denny Green impression by Brian Kelly in the press conference, slamming the table with his.
Oh yeah, that's right.
With his hand there. I thought he was channeling his inner Denny Green.
Good
there.
call.
You know what I mean? But yeah, I mean, losing their receivers, losing a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback. And, I know that there's talent there at LSU, but that's still a lot to replace for a Brian Kelly coach team where he's only, going into his 3rd year and he really hasn't had a chance to stack recruiting class on top of recruiting class. So I thought there would be a bit of a drop back with them this year with losing that kind of talent.
Here's my take, David.
Yeah.
And our buddy Tim Prangley's going to love me for this.
Sure.
Because sometimes he gets on me for getting on USC, but I just always call it like I see it. I believe that USC answered more questions, relevant questions, meaningful questions than any team in college football over the weekend. And this is the reason why.
Yeah.
I think Notre Dame won the most significant game because Notre Dame really needed to win that. They couldn't go to Texas A&M, lose a game to a team that's probably going to finish 8-4, 7-5, and then put up a good with Florida State faltering. And if USC would have lost, just not having the kind of schedule that 10-2 would probably be a playoff season, they would probably have to get to 11 wins. So I went into the weekend saying the most important game for any team is Notre Dame. However, once the games were played, we usually play this game after week 1 where if a team goes out and scores 50 points, we're like, okay, does that mean that they've got a great offense or does that mean that they ran into a lousy defense? So we got to see 3 or 4 more games be played out. However, what we saw with USC was they played physical on defense. Their strength and conditioning was much better. They looked like a legitimate defense. We know that LSU has a good offense. Not a Jaden Daniels offense.
Right.
But I know that they have a good offense. Now, their offense may not perform to the level that it would have this season because they just lost the one back who did any damage against USC. John Emery was lost for the entire season in practice on Tuesday. But they played a legitimate top 25 offense in the country, and they held them to 20 points, and they looked respectable.
Yeah, that didn't look like the Alex Grinch defenses of the past, which,
No.
Maybe that's, addition by subtraction. Get rid of Alex Grinch is probably the best answer to, a lot of your defensive woes is probably the right move there. But yeah, I mean, you look at the production though that LSU lost though, Mark, to see, both receivers out the door, to see what Thomas and Neighbors gone and Daniels gone. That's a lot of production from a year ago. And, I kind of thought that basically that was like, to me, LSU was kind of like 22 Tennessee. 22 Tennessee had Tillman, had Hyatt, had Hooker. And then I knew that once Tennessee lost those guys, they were going to drop back a little bit in 23. I thought the same thing with LSU. Once they lost the receivers and the quarterback, they were going to drop back a little bit this year.
But there's 2 sides to the ball, David.
Well, yeah, but Tennessee was an
Their
off.
defense,
Well,
LSU's defense is not going to be as bad as it was last year. And let's remember that
yeah,
LSU lost game number 1 by 3 touchdowns last year.
they did. That was a good game for about 3 quarters, and then Florida State did
Mm.
pull away in the end. That was a one-possession game going into the fourth quarter.
Yeah, it was, but they got clearly manhandled in the fourth
Yeah,
quarter.
yeah, they did. I mean,
That's not what happened Monday night. That game was a toss-up against
right.
USC.
Well, and maybe that's why
I don't
Brian.
know who and I'm sorry to interrupt you,
Go ahead.
David.
No, my bad.
USC gets total credit for the win, and LSU lost the game. That's how football works. That's how sports works. Somebody wins 100% versus a loss is 100%. It doesn't, there's nothing in between, regardless of what the score is. But I come away from that game having no idea who the better team is. USC won the game on that night,
Right.
but those two teams, that's a toss-up.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a big year for Lincoln Riley. I just wanted to say that as well. Because last year 7-5, with Williams at quarterback, if they're to have another 7-5 year mark, I think the natives would start to get a little bit restless. I don't know if that's what Tim and the crew would be saying if they would repeat a 7-5 type season. Yeah, he had said he was optimistic about this year because he expects maybe the defense to be improved. But um, would that be a fair statement if they duplicated this year what they did last year?
If USC, after this win, duplicated last year?
Well, coming into this year, if
Yeah.
USC had a back-to-back 7-5
Sure.
season with
Yep.
Lincoln Riley, I would think the natives would be getting
Oh,
restless.
of course. They're already restless. They were restless coming into this season just after one 7-5 regular season.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and then joining the Big Ten and what's that going to be like? I could see that. Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see how both teams' seasons unfold. The other team I wanted to talk about too, speaking of big wins, and a lot of people are big on the Penn State win at West Virginia. By the way, did you end up picking West Virginia to win that game last week?
I made this explanation.
Go ahead. Go.
There's always a story.
Justify yourself here, Mark
There-
Rogers.
I clearly stated I am going on principle, and that principle is that I am looking for upsets because there are upsets every week. Now, there are less upsets in week 1 because there are so many FCS games.
Right.
That there are less opportunities for upsets, but there are 4 to 5 upsets when everybody starts playing each other, power conference teams. And that I was just searching for that upset. I kind of pinned myself to that upset, but I clearly said Penn State's a much better team, but I am just shooting in the dark. And yes, I followed through with officially picking West Virginia to win that game, fully knowing that they were not most likely going to win that game.
Yeah, I thought that I wasn't surprised at how well, Penn State moved the ball in that game. I thought that maybe West Virginia would put up a little bit more of an offensive fight in that game. But that was the one thing I thought. And you know what? I think that West Virginia did leave some points out there in that game from what I remember, Mark. I think they had some empty trips to the red zone where they kicked some field goals, and I think they got stopped a couple times in the red zone, if I'm not mistaken. So
Yeah.
they might have left some points out there. Not that it would have mattered in the end. I think Penn State was clearly the better football team. But I'm wondering if that's fool's gold for Penn State, because Penn State looked fairly impressive offensively against West Virginia. And then when they stepped up against defensive competition last year, it didn't look so good for Aller and that offense.
Yeah, and I reminded people of that while I was impressed with Penn State winning the way they did, the first quarter or the first half was pretty competitive until very late in the half when Penn State separated themselves. And like you just noted, Aller threw for 325 against this West Virginia team last year in 3 touchdowns.
Right.
So statistically, he did not even have a good game. Let me rephrase that. It was not required of him to have a big game. He only threw the ball 17 times this past week, but he threw 3 touchdowns and he missed his first couple throws. And after that, he was on it. I like Aller.
Yeah.
there's something about Penn State quarterbacks.
Ohio quarterbacks that go to Penn State.
There you
Mark
go.
is in.
That's
Mark
it.
has a man crush on Todd Blackledge, Sean Clifford, president. He was riding that Sean Clifford fan club for forever.
Oh,
And,
Sean Clifford, yeah.
yeah, and
Well,
then
Todd Blackledge, by the way, and I had a nice discussion at Big Ten Media Days last year. He was very kind, and we had a long discussion, and he seemed to legitimately, enjoy the back and forth about Big Ten football. Yeah, Todd Blackledge.
no, he's solid. He's solid. I'm not putting him in the Herbie Klatt category, but that's
Okay.
I've got him in the rung right under those guys.
He was a much better quarterback than both of them.
True. Although Klatt did put up some numbers at Colorado. Don't get me started on Herbie. Herbie made nice.
Was a first rounder.
That's true. But yeah, it didn't work out so well in the NFL. And did win a national title though, too. You got to add that into the equation. Let's get to the docket tomorrow. My early feel on the big one at noon. I just want to chime in on that. I'd be remiss if I didn't give my analysis for the TTUN fans. Mark's largest fan base, as we all unfortunately know, right? Unfortunately. I think it's going to be a close one. But here's the thing. I mean, well, let me ask you this. And I didn't listen to the TTUN show this week because, well, I just had better things to do. But that's neither here nor there. In any case, have you heard from their fan base, and maybe Dace had said this, do they feel that Mullings is the better of the two backs between him and Edwards, by the way?
Well, it was funny because Dace had me on this week.
Yeah.
And he's given up on this team. He's
really?
like 7-5. We're done. This is awful. We're not recovering. He is just, I was, again, we were going back to 2020, and I was the one lifting up Michigan saying, no, they got a good shot this week. These are the reasons why. But I brought up, he went down all of his points on why this Michigan team's not as good as he thought they were, or that they're not as good as they were last year. And he left out the Donovan Edwards factor. And then I brought up Donovan Edwards, and he just kind of scowled, and he said, because he made a preseason prediction that Donovan Edwards was going to be in New York.
Yeah, I heard
Heisman
that.
Finalist, and he went, forget that prediction now. He needs to be a specialty. He is now resigned to the best way to use Donovan Edwards is a specialty player where you bring him in and you run gadget plays and you just kind of form your offense and do different things to get him in space and do those things. But he's not the every down back, which I didn't say that he definitely wasn't, but it was my lean during this offseason that he's not that guy. He's better than Blake Corum on occasion, but down after down after down, he's not.
Well, you know what I always saw him as is a little bit of. I always thought that they maybe missed the point of using him more in the passing game as kind of like a receiving running back. As those running backs that are running backs, but they basically catch a lot of passes out of the backfield.
Yes,
type running backs. The Larry Centers of the world.
Larry Centers, 100 catches in the NFL when that was just unbelievable.
Right, yeah. He was basically a running back, but he was just pretty much there to catch passes. You know what I mean? Bet you wouldn't have thought you wouldn't have gotten a Larry Centers reference at 1:30 in the morning.
Yeah,
but yeah, like
he
that.
set the all-time reception record for a running back in a single season.
Yeah, he was a great pass receiver. But you like that type of player.
Yeah.
And the thing about it is, a couple things with their offense, and I don't know if Dave's got to this too. The thing about their team the last few years, and it's been their strength up front, particularly on the offensive line. And that's the thing that I was wondering too coming into the season. Could they duplicate that yet again? I know Moore is still there, but I don't know. That offensive line did not look great last week. It did not. No. I don't know if Dace was down in the mouth about that as well, but
yes.
That was a group that did not look as good. And then you've got the quarterback situation as well. I mean, I think their defense can keep this game close tomorrow. I think that they could probably keep Texas somewhere in the low 20s, but that's all Texas needs to be in from my point of view. I think they can win this thing somewhere in the neighborhood of like a 24-13, 24-14 kind of game.
Yeah. Well, based on what we saw last week, I would agree.
I don't know if that's your vibe.
Well, it's my vibe. Again, am I going to fight logic a little bit? Because something just tells me that Michigan's going to show up for this game.
Yeah, I mean, I think their defense is going to be the real matchup is going to be Sark versus Wink Martindale, and how yours looks against that defense, in my view.
Sark's defense against this Michigan offense?
No, Sark's offense versus
Oh,
the Wink
well, yeah,
Martindale, who's running their defense now.
that's an elite matchup right
Yeah.
there. The Texas offensive line against the Michigan defensive front, and
Right.
trying to see Texas receivers separate from that Michigan secondary. Those are tremendous matchups. Those are as good as it gets in college football.
Yeah, Texas has got that Bama transfer Bond at receiver, and then
Yep.
they've got that freshman I know that they're big on, right, Mark?
Ryan Wingo.
Yeah, it's supposed to be a real big time playmaker. I mean, I think it'll be good for about 3.5 quarters, and I think Texas gets a late score to put it away. But I think their defense will keep them hanging around for like a while. That's
Yeah.
just my vibe
I can
on
see
it.
that.
You know what? The other game I am still really intrigued, by the way, by the Shador Dylan Raiola, aka Mini Mahomes battle. By
Yeah.
the way, is Dylan Raiola trying to morph into looking like Patrick Mahomes or something? By the way,
Was he doing something facially or something?
well,
I'm not aware of?
if you look at the two, I want to say it's separated at birthmark,
Hmm.
but there's a resemblance there.
Okay, we'll give that a look. Somebody was comparing their throwing style tonight. Somebody that I saw on air that was going through the Mahomes comparison that way, but not. We'll look up a picture here and see what we can come up with. But yeah, that's a great quarterback duel. But of course, for Raiola, it's the first time that he's going to face. Not, of course, he's going to be at home, but a big time opponent. Even though Colorado's got a very flimsy team, but a big time opponent, atmosphere, that sort of thing.
One time Ohio State commit Dylan Raiola, by the way. Interesting enough.
Yeah, you wonder how that quarterback competition would have played out.
Yeah. Well, I think next year everybody's, thinking about that Aaron Nolan, possible Julian Sane, quarterback duel down the road. Do you get like kind of a poor man's Burrow versus Haskins 2018? See, look at that. That could be Mahomes' younger brother.
I see it.
Yeah, I mean, you see the resemblance?
Yeah, he's going for the hairstyle and the whole deal. Yeah.
Right. I think he's a little pudgy like Mahomes is too, maybe.
Oh, yeah, I see it. I've never really looked at him before.
Yeah. Dylan Raiola and Patrick Mahomes have never been seen in the same room together. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a shootout. I think that, by the way, I was looking at the over in 55 in that game, Mark. That's something to consider if for those folks that like to endeavor into the gambling realm.
Yes, 55, you just need, something in that 31-27 kind of range.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that game reeks of 31-28 tomorrow, Mark. I
Yeah.
think. I mean, I think Shador and Mahomes Jr. there put on a show.
Now, for those that like to put a dime or two on these games, our buddy Steve Merrill,
Yeah.
the spread is 6.5. His 10,000 simulation model runs the 10,000 simulations. Nebraska by 12.
Really?
Yes.
Wow. What if Matt Ja Rule turns around that program, Mark? Somewhere Scott Frost is punching air, I think. You know what I mean? if Matt Rule but you know what? Rule's done it before. You got to give him credit,
Yeah, he's done it twice. Sid Irish goes Nebraska 45-27. That gets you safely past 55.
Oh, he sees that game as what, 45-27?
Yes.
Wow, that's a ton of points. I mean, I could see it. Colorado's defense just isn't very good. I mean, Raiola should put up some numbers against that defense. So
For sure.
the other game. Hey, Mark, any vibe on Honda McCord versus Tech Tebow, Georgia Tech versus Syracuse?
Yeah, I like that game. I'm going to keep my eye out on that one at noon Eastern. Georgia Tech could go to 2-0 in the ACC. Yeah, I don't know enough about I saw Georgia Tech play the Florida State game, but then Florida State turns around and shows what they're worth this year against Boston College. I would tend to think Syracuse is at home.
Yeah.
I think Georgia Tech's probably a little bit better, but not much, which pretty much makes it a coin flip.
You think that game's a coin flip, huh?
I don't know what the spread is on the game.
Yeah, I was trying to take a look at the line. I don't think it's extremely high. I had it pulled up right here. Bear with me just a second. Yeah, that was part of the noon slate. Yeah, Tech's -3, Mark.
Okay, so Tech is, according to Vegas, a somewhat better team.
Yeah, I mean, total of 61.5. I wonder if that's a game where we also see some points, or if that tends to be a high scoring affair tomorrow.
That's kind of strange, just because Syracuse is coming off a game in which they scored, I think, 34 against Ohio, and Georgia Tech had a 24-21 game against Florida State. Then they won last week like 35-12 or something like that. So it's not like they have buried group of 5 teams with their offenses. So that seems a bit high.
Yeah, Honda put up some numbers that first game, didn't he, Mark?
Yes, he did. He's a good quarterback. It's not bad.
Well,
this might be a good spot for him.
I mean, we'll see. We'll see. I mean, I think they're going to have to throw the ball around there at Syracuse, because I'm sure that there's going to be some games where they're trailing and they have no choice but to sling the rock around. But yeah. By the way, have they established this is the biggest Iowa State game?
That's what I said.
So it's
how
bigger
is it not?
That 21 game was pretty big, because remember, Iowa State was kind of like trendy at that time. Remember, everybody was all over Campbell at that time as the new big time hot hire in college
I understand
football.
all that, but the difference is there was a 4-team playoff, and nobody in their right mind thought either one of those teams was anywhere close to a 4-team playoff, as opposed to this year a 12-team playoff. This is the biggest game in the history of these programs.
Wow.
Rivalry. Iowa State, and I stated this when we revealed all our all-time rankings, and a bunch of Iowa State fans came out of nowhere, which I didn't know that any Iowa State fans watched this, but they came out of nowhere and were all upset with me for just telling the truth. This is one of the very absolute worst programs in the history of college football. They're horrible. They finished, that is their only top 10 finish ever, that 2020 team.
Yeah, why do you? What in the name of Troy Davis, Mark, are you doing? Desecrating the Iowa State Cyclones that
yes.
way.
What in the name of Seneca Wallace? Yes,
that's right. I had to give a famous alum there, Mark. But yeah, well, but that's why I think Campbell was such a hot hire coming into 21, because everybody thought he's was turning that program around.
3 top 25 finishes in their history.
Yeah.
3.
That's pretty amazing. I think that year that Davis went for over 2,000 yards, was that one of them?
Maybe.
Yeah, I wonder if that was one of those top 20 finishes. Yeah, because he went over 2 bills that year, didn't he, Mark?
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
Which is pretty amazing when you stop to think about it.
I don't think they did finish in the top 25 that year. I don't believe so, but we're going to verify it here. You know that Iowa State's got a horrible football program all time, because anytime I type in a football team, like a school, unless it's Duke or Kentucky or somebody like that, I get the football program. I get all the links to the football stats, and I got all basketball stuff with Iowa State. So I had to put football in there. So their all-time, we're going to see their rankings right here. Iowa State, Oregon State, Wake, those 3, Rutgers, are just horrible.
By the way, I think Rutgers covers the 22 tomorrow against Akron, Mark.
I believe so too.
I think big day for Kyle Monungai, who's gonna go off in that one.
So what we see here is that if you look in this, well, I can't highlight the row is right. Okay, AP Post. So there they finished number 9 in 2020. This row right here is blank. There's 2000. That's Seneca Wallace. Number 25, they snuck in.
Okay.
There's a number 19 in 76. So that passes Troy Davis's time. They did not finish. There's 3. Those are their 3 all-time rankings ever.
Right. Well, you know what, though? I mean, and even Campbell's year in 28, I mean, you take the year with a little bit of a grain of salt, though, with the COVID, situation and all of that.
Sure.
So, yeah, I mean, you gotta factor that into the equation.
So you're telling me they're even worse than what I'm
Yeah, well,
saying. Yes, that's your point.
Yes, I believe you've made your case, Mark. Yeah. But by the way, I like Iowa in that game. I saw the line -2, so I think Iowa's going to cover that. I'm kind of buying what you were saying. I think Iowa's offense is probably marginally better, but I think it only has to be a little bit better with that defense that they've got. So, yeah, I could see them winning that game, and maybe like Corey said, winning that game by 2 scores. So,
yeah. I would take 2 scores if somebody wanted to give me 2 touchdowns for sure.
Oh, you take Iowa State getting the 2 scores?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, you think that thing comes down to the end?
I think that's what happens every time they play. And I think this Iowa State team's a good team.
You were trying to sell me on that Iowa offense and the improved Iowa offense there about a week or so.
There is an improved Iowa offense. I think they've gone from pathetic to horrible.
Wow.
Is that an upgrade?
Is that I thought that's a lateral move, Mark.
I didn't know if that
move. I don't know if that's an upgrade. I think
I've always gone
to
I've always gone to pathetic as being the term that I really, when I want to make a point and really slam somebody, I come out with pathetic.
By the way, what job did Brian Ferentz ever get, by the way? Did he land somewhere?
He's on the Maryland staff.
Was he like a position coach of some kind?
He's an analyst.
Jeez. He gave him a job. Really?
I will double check. I don't want to miss.
That's what I was dying to know is where.
Yeah, he's on the Maryland staff.
Do you think Kirk put in a call for him? He probably, I mean, you think that he's got some pull. Kirk's been coaching since,
He's
Pagers
a senior offensive assistant.
See, really? I don't think that. Why is the Maryland coach escaping me right now? I should know.
Mike Locksley.
I don't think Locksley's handing over the playbook to Brian there. Do you, Mark?
No. He's saying, in comparison, we've done just fine here. We don't want any more advice from you.
Yeah,
no, thank you.
Yeah, Brian, we're keeping you as far away from game planning as possible and play calling as possible.
Yes, we know how to run an off tackle run play. We know how to do that. That's on page 1 right here.
By the way, that Maryland offense, it could be, you know what, though? Maryland does this every year. They look kind of entertaining to start the season, and then they flame out in the middle of the year anyway.
Yeah.
That's typical Maryland.
Yes. They love to play Connecticut. They love to play Charlotte.
Yeah.
They love those games. They usually throw in who is the school down there that they often play? There's an FCS school in the Baltimore area that's escaping me.
Me too.
Anyway, I'll come up with it. They play them often.
Yeah, what happens is they pick on those teams, then they get into the heart of the Big Ten schedule, and then they just start to get boat raced. And
typically, although they played the Buckeyes well for more than a half, and they played Michigan really tough last year.
Last 2 years they played the team up north tough.
Yeah, especially last year. But the last 2 years. Yeah.
No.
Oh, keep chopping. Nailed it for me. Thank you, Towson. Dave Brown also got it. That's who I was thinking of. Towson. They like to play Towson.
I wonder how long Loxley's long for that job. But you got to think because he's a native of that area, and as long as he keeps the program right around 8 wins, they probably keep him around there for a
Yeah.
while. I would
He's
think.
he's been going 8-5, 8-5 the last 2 years. Tim's making fun of this Iowa State game. This is if I could only watch one game tomorrow,
No.
I'm watching Iowa State. Absolutely, I am.
Yeah, Mark. Though what are you thinking? That 20-17, 17.
Yeah.
You got a soft spot in your heart for these lower scoring football games. These,
People
mid
that actually
1980s Big Ten football scores that you were used to.
I'll remind Tim that people that actually understand the game,
Mm,
then that they appreciate those kind of games. We
yeah,
we
I
don't
know.
have to be razzle dazzled by 45, 42 games.
Never a bit a fan of those Big 12 scores, were you, Mark?
No, I wasn't. I thought that was a joke.
Really?
Well, I thought it was a joke when okay, there's a difference between especially for those of us who love the NFL, and I
Right.
did it one time because you watch college on Saturday, then you flip to the NFL on Sunday, and you then appreciate, oh, this is Drew Brees, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning. They have to throw against legitimate defenses and threat. Like when they put up 35, it's like bravo,
Sure.
because you're throwing in tight windows, you're dissecting an NFL defense.
Yeah.
When you're watching, here's the game that comes to mind. RG3, the year he won the Heisman, taking on Arizona in the Alamo Bowl. Final score, I believe, was 63-56.
Yeah.
Like, there's just dudes running free in the secondary. Nobody has any interest in tackling, or it's just a joke.
What was that West Virginia score that one year, Mark? Was it 70 to 60 something? Or
against Oklahoma,
yeah.
58-56.
Yeah, when Gino was the quarterback at West Virginia, right?
They came within a turnover of going to the Big 12 championship game. No, that
Yeah.
was Greer.
That was Will Greer?
Will Greer.
Okay, it wasn't Gino?
Yeah, this was 2018. Well, they
Okay.
might have had games like that with Gino. They probably did.
Yeah, I was
Of course,
thinking
they
more like
hung 70 on Brent Venables Clemson in the Orange Bowl with Gino.
remember when Pat White and Slayton did up Bradford and Oklahoma and that what was it? Was that yeah.
In the Orange Bowl.
Yeah,
the Fiesta.
The Fiesta. That was the
48
game.
points.
Yeah, when Wanstash beat him and cost Rich Rod a chance to play for the national title that year.
Yes.
Tough memory for Joey Foster and the crew. Then Rich Rod got out of town. So, yeah. All right. Well, I think it's going to be a fun day of college football. I mean, I think there's some good games tomorrow. I don't think it's an overwhelming tilt, though, this week.
No. But we do have Iowa State as the headliner.
Oh well, I'm sure Tim's excited. We can already tell. No, I actually, even though I don't think either Nebraska or Colorado really have like long-term futures, that's the game. That's just for exciting fashion, Give me some of that Big 12 football. Give me some 2008 Big 12 football.
Yeah.
Some Graham
You're
Harrell.
not getting 2008 Big 12 football. Well, yes. Okay. 2008 Big 12. I got you. I thought you were taking us back to the salad days of Nebraska, Colorado. No, you're not taking us back to like 2000.
Yeah, I'm taking you back to Graham Harrell, McCoy, Bradford, that triumvirate.
Yeah.
That year.
None of those teams could ever win big games. No. If I could watch one game, if you were shutting me off from all college football, excluding one game, out of obligation of brand, then I probably go Texas, Michigan. But I think I go Iowa State 1, and then I go to the Texas, Michigan game. I really like this Tennessee, NC State game as well.
By the way, I will say one of the most exciting Rose Bowls that's ever been played was that the last time those two teams played. ESPN Classic.
Who?
Texas and the team up north.
Michigan. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
37-35. Yeah.
Yeah. Kicked the field goal in the last play. Henny and Vince Young in a shootout for the ages.
Yes. Although the more I think about this Tennessee NC State game, I think Tennessee's probably going to dismantle them. I don't know that that's going to be a great game.
Yeah, I tell you what, a lot of people like that Tennessee quarterback. They think, he's got that Hendon Hooker kind of magic to him from a couple years ago. Although I saw people had Tennessee in their playoff this year. Didn't you have them in your playoff, Mark?
I did.
Yeah. Gosh, boy, after last week, I'm rethinking the Fighting Dabos and that pick for them to win the ACC. I'll tell you that much. Maybe I should have put some money. Well, I picked Miami to make the playoff, but yeah, because that money on Cam Ward is looking well spent. Although that's another pump the brakes game. That may also be about Florida just being horrible this year. With the way
Well,
Miami looked.
Clemson is going to go play in the ACC. So you don't have to beat teams outside the ACC to win the ACC. So
Right. And when you played probably the best team maybe in the country last week, you're going to get your comeuppance. Poor Dabo, man. Doesn't like that transfer portal, and it's going to come back to bite him, I think.
Well, I think it already has.
Yeah. Yeah. It's going to be a rough year for Billy Napier, though, too, by the way. Even though Miami looked good, that might be a little bit of fool's gold. Billy Napier might not be long for the job.
Yeah, they needed to show up much better than that. I think he's done.
Yeah. Well, it's tough, though, because Mullen didn't leave him garbage there. Mullen couldn't recruit, and Mullen left him with just a garbage sandwich there. You know what I mean?
But when Mullen was there, he won.
Well, Mullen couldn't recruit, though. Mullen had the good year and the COVID year with the Trask team, and we had 2 good years. Maybe was it 2 good years, 3 good years? Okay, 18, 19, and then the COVID year.
Yes,
but
he went to 3 major bowl games in a row.
Okay, but the wheels came off the wagon rather quickly.
Sure,
you know what I mean.
But a part of that was his antics. Like he had a 6-7 season. Other coaches would have survived that, but it was going 6-7. And him acting like a fool, him, kind of, I don't want to say he was lying, but he was kind of discounted the whole Shoegate throw against LSU. And then he dresses up like Darth Vader. Then he instigates a fight. He goes out to midfield against Missouri. He just imploded.
Yes. I remember you
outside of football, he imploded and he looked like a clown. And he's just an odd
right,
guy.
Mark?
What's that?
Buffoonery, I think, was the term you used, Mark, right?
Buffoonery. Yes.
Buffoonery. Yes. But how he was recruiting like 50 something or 30 something or what were his recruiting rankings? You're recruiting in the state of Florida. You can throw a rock and hit a 4-star. I mean, come on, dude.
He did not recruit in the 30s.
I guarantee he wasn't recruiting in the top. Pull up Mullen's recruiting classes. They were not top 15.
What year do you want? We'll start there.
Well, okay. Well, pull them all up. I mean, pull up 17.
Sure, we're going to.
Well, yeah, 18, 19, 20.
I guarantee that he was not. Okay, well, let's start with 20.
Okay.
You ready for this?
Go ahead.
You picked the wrong fight here.
Well, what was 8?
There's a number 7 class in 2020 by Dan Mullen.
Okay.
Which way are we going? Let's go to
21.
We'll go to 21.
I think 21 was not a great one.
Number 12.
Okay.
Okay, we'll go back to 19 because let's see, 21, that would have been his last class. So if we go back to 19.
You can do 18 too because that would have been his,
number 9.
Oh, well.
Dan Mullen did not do a bad job at Florida.
I could have sworn his recruiting rankings. I had thought that he was not recruiting well last
that's
couple
why
of
you
years
come
there.
Here, David.
Okay.
Number 14. So
okay, I stand
12,
corrected.
14, 9, and 7.
I stand corrected. I had thought that he was far further down the list than that. I mean, you should be able to recruit in the state of Florida, by the way, but I digress. But yeah, but it's going to be a rough year for Napier, though. That schedule is not going to do him any favors this year.
No, he's got 1 foot out the door.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, Mark.
David.
Well, always a pleasure. You're going to do the call-in show tomorrow night?
Absolutely. We'll be here.
All right, Mark. Well, you take care of yourself.
Appreciate it. Good to see you.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Dr. Buckeye. there. And Jackson, we got to put you on the back burner because we got to get the callers themselves in front here. Got Sean on the line. Sean, what's going on?
Oh, not too much, Mark. How's it going?
I'm doing just fine. What's up?
I got a pick bone with Jeffrey a minute ago. I'm on a call with him every week, and I got my haircut last week, and he never mentioned it.
I don't know why he didn't notice that.
I mean,
it's tight. It's looking tight.
Yeah.
You know, the women love that. The women love the flow.
Absolutely. Well, it was out of control. It was getting to be a bush.
The women. I always would get my hair cut if I was going to go on some kind of. Well, I wouldn't do this all the time, and I'm not going to go into my personal life too much. I may be taking this down a road, but I had a significant other that I was engaged to, and she wanted my hair couldn't be long enough, and then. And then there were all sorts of, I started getting opinions because she wanted me to get opinions from other women. And it's amazing that how many women like long flowing hair, and it just drives me crazy. But Sean, you're looking good to most of the ladies out there, I believe.
Well, they haven't let me know that. So.
With the long locks. I'm telling you.
Mark, you said something that caught my
oh boy,
that caught my attention here just a minute ago. It sounds like Steve Dace is being rather fatalistic about the Wolverines.
That was that's the way he came across when I was on there the other day.
I mean, like that. That's interesting to me. Like, I just want to hear maybe a bit more exposition into his thought process there.
Well, what happens is he records his segment and then he brings me on, and then it's funny sometimes. And I hope I'm not revealing anything because Steve's a good friend, and obviously I'm honored that he asks me on almost every week. Because he certainly doesn't need to do that. But it's funny because he made a reference like last week during my segment. He said, well, Mark, you got to hear what I had to say. No, I never get to hear what you have to say. He just records his segment at another time. So I have no idea what he just said. But basically it was Davis Warren's horrible. And Alex Orji, what are we doing? Why didn't we go to the transfer portal? This guy has been groomed as our starting quarterback all this time, and he was that awful that we couldn't even put him on the field. The guy can't throw a pass, can't hit the broadside of a barn. We're afraid to let him throw the ball past the line of scrimmage, so he's just a gadget player. And Davis Warren is a walk-on. When has a walk-on ever amounted to anything if your name's not Stetson Bennett or Baker Mayfield?
That was the name he was going to
bring. And so our wide receivers, we know, are never any good, or he wasn't quite that.
Well, I mean that receiving. I think the receivers are especially mediocre.
Yeah,
and that might be a generous term this year. I mean, the funny thing is Michigan's had some pretty good receivers. I mean, Nico Collins and Donovan Peoples-Jones were way underrated in their time in Michigan. I always thought they were like I always thought they were like legitimate NFL.
Yeah. Well, look at them now.
Yeah, I'm not surprised by the success they've had. And I mean, like they're not a receiver factory or anything. They've never been built that way. But I mean, I feel like they just really. I feel like the cupboard is bare. At least from what I saw in that game last week. I mean,
well, back if
there is zero
receiver factory at one time, but that was a long time ago.
Oh yeah, back in the David Terrell, Braylon Edwards, Mario Manningham era.
In the last 20 years, no.
Yeah. So
those were part of his points. Donovan Edwards is not a superstar. The offensive line isn't going to be as dominant as it has been. We couldn't move Fresno State out of the way until the fourth quarter. All of that. It was all offense. Really no issues with the defense that I could tell.
Yeah, I mean, the defense is. I think the defense is probably going to be slightly worse than it was last year, but they're still going to be excellent. And I look at they're kind of that weird team. Like I look at them in probably 7, maybe 8 of their games. I'm looking at them and I think the other team offensively, they're just not going to have enough to do much of anything. Michigan's defense will be able to carry even a bad offense to those wins. But I also don't see them having much of a chance against the top level teams this year. Really, I mean, I don't see them being. Maybe, hold on a second.
Sean, you still with us? I don't know what's going on here. We may move Sean to the back.
Mark. Sorry.
All right.
Sorry, I just had something had something come up in my house here. I had to take care of real quick. But no, So I just don't see them Michigan being much of a threat against. And maybe they'll prove me wrong tomorrow when beating Texas, but against they're just I kind of feel like. I mean, do you feel that way at all? I mean, they don't seem like they're going to be a real threat against the upper level teams.
Well, here's the deal. They don't seem like that, but how many teams have been top 10 teams in the nation over the course of the time that I've been watching football, and they had to work some things out the first few weeks and didn't look overly impressive against mid-level competition? You know, I could make a list that would go on for miles.
It happens a lot. But I mean, the difference with this Michigan team is I almost feel like it's probably just an ability, a talent issue, as much as it is. Like sometimes you see teams that are really young, they're putting pieces into place and they're not efficient. They don't have the schemes down yet. I see them starting a quarterback that'll probably be playing at Ball State in a year or two. And and skill position talent, that's not much better than that. That's what I've seen. That's what this looks like to me. But enough about. So I'll just say I do think Texas wins probably a little bit easier than most people think tomorrow, even though they are at home, even though it is a road trip to Ann Arbor. I think they'll, if they are what I think they are. I mean, Fresno State and Colorado State are actually pretty similar kind of level teams here. Fresno State went 4-4 in the Mountain West last year. Colorado State went 3-5. Texas murdered Fresno State and murdered Colorado State.
Okay.
And Texas struggled.
You know how many examples of this type of comparison we could make throughout history that turned out to be completely meaningless.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely.
But that's what we've got to go on. You're right. Texas annihilated Colorado State and Michigan struggled. You're right.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't have any. There's no aspect of Texas. I think they're one of the more complete teams in the country this year. I don't have many questions about them anywhere. And I think they're elite in certain. Their offensive line's elite. I think their edge defenders are elite with the kind of transfers they brought in.
Yeah.
One of the better quarterbacks in the country.
Well, their defense was far from elite last year, so I want to see them play somebody decent. And if Michigan's offense is as inept as it showed last week, then I'll still be saying that 24 hours from now. And Texas has a weak schedule for an SEC schedule. So I don't know that, again, I got to see Texas play. I think there are definitely levels right now with Georgia and Ohio State up there. And I'm not fully convinced that Texas is quite on that level.
No. They might not. They might not be in. Yeah, of course they're bringing in a lot of new faces, a lot of for Brewers, but I have a lot of confidence, and they do have a brutal schedule too. So, they're one of those teams that might be like one of the 7 or 8 best teams in the country that just slips up a couple of times and misses out on the playoffs. I mean, that's definitely a possibility for them, but I don't think they're tripping up tomorrow. I have a hard time seeing that. There's looking through the betting lines this week. One spread really caught my eye here this week. Kansas going to Champaign tomorrow.
5 points, right?
It was 4.5 last night.
4.5. Yeah.
I mean, like 4.5 and 5, like the different books.
Yep.
And I was expecting that to be in the double digits fairly solidly, like 13-ish. And I don't know, like, I don't know if you talk with Steve Merrill about this game at all, but that line seems really short to me.
It seems like it.
Yeah.
It seems like it.
Yeah, so
I definitely came across the same conclusion. But yeah. I don't know what to say about that other than I came to the same conclusion, but I wouldn't be surprised if Vegas knows what they're talking about.
Yeah, it seems like these are always the kind of games that really trip me up. It's just like, I saw it. I see this. Like I see the line, and it seems way, way off. And those are always the games where Kansas wins 31-28 or something like,
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Illinois proves to be a more physical team and stays in the game because they're able to run the ball and they're able to kind of push Kansas around and get pressure on the quarterback. But Kansas, when they get the ball out, get it in space, they're faster, have a more dynamic offense, etc.
Yeah. And that also just interesting given how Kansas absolutely annihilated them last year. So that really doesn't have any impact on how they set the spread, I guess.
Yeah, that was at Kansas. And somebody told me the other day that Illinois has sold this game out. Or maybe Kansas has sold this game out, but it's a sellout. And this is Illinois' first sellout in a long time.
Oh, Illinois has to, among Power 4 programs, it has to be like one of the most depressing environments to watch on TV live ever.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
nothing
just
interesting about it. Yeah, it's a generic stadium.
Yeah, the energy is always really low.
Yeah,
if they're playing a Michigan or Ohio State, there are as many fans for those teams.
Yep.
For the visitors. So yeah. So I mean, hopefully something good can come for Illinois. I mean, the fans that they do have deserve it. That's for sure. They've been through all that.
If we look at Illinois in a 5-7 season last year, I don't know that they didn't play fairly close games against teams that are just as good as Kansas.
I don't know. I mean, like, wasn't every game in the Big Ten West last year like fairly close? They were all like 13-10, it felt like.
So they lost to Kansas, and I watched this game. It was worse than the final score.
Oh,
they made a late run at them, but they lost by 11, and they were a 3-point underdog. They lost to Penn State by 17. They lost to Purdue by 25. They lost to Nebraska by 13. They beat Maryland by 3. They lost to Wisconsin by 4. They beat Minnesota by 1. They beat Indiana by 3. They lost to Iowa by 2. They lost to Northwestern by 2. Well, Iowa and Northwestern, were basically on Kansas's level last year. They only lost those games by 2 and 2. Wisconsin was pretty much on Kansas's level last year. They lost that game by 4.
Yeah, but it's a little bit different. Kansas is a much different kind of team. Like they're going to win.
They've got better offenses than those teams, but those teams all have better defenses than Kansas. That's why I'm saying overall they're on the same level. They beat Maryland by 3, And Maryland was as good
Maryland's a
as
closer
Kansas
team.
last year.
Maryland's kind of a closer team to Kansas, but
I think all those teams. I think Iowa was better than Kansas.
yeah.
So they hung with all those teams.
Yeah, so I don't know, man. Like it's a game that I might lay off just because that number just seems. I get burned on these all the times where my perception of what the spread should be and what it actually is just so huge.
Well,
So
I got to make my picks when I get off here. Whoa! I got to make my picks when we get off here. We'll try to steer you in the right direction if you need any advice from me. Which
awesome. I might just outsource that pick to you this week. So
I probably was going to. Well, Kansas is in the top 25, so I'm going to pick that game.
Yeah. Absolutely.
All right, sir.
I just one last question before I go. What I think it looks like a fairly lean like 3:30 block tomorrow. What's your recommended? What's your priority game?
Oh, I'm watching Iowa State for sure.
Okay.
And then after that, I can't remember Auburn, Cal. Who else is playing at 3?
Michigan State, Maryland.
Oh,
I think on that time.
That's my man. AT&T is doing this to me again, where I can't pull that up. I'm going to go because then there's South Carolina, Kentucky. This is what I'm guessing is going to happen. I got Iowa State on one screen. I always watch 2 games. I can't pay attention to 3, or I would. Iowa State, and then I'm going to start Maryland, Michigan State, just as a Big Ten opener. I know it's probably a garbage game, but I'm just starting there. But I'm keeping a very close watch on South Carolina, Kentucky, and Auburn, Cal. And if that Maryland, Michigan State, like if Michigan State's as bad as they might be and Maryland's beating them 20-3 in the second quarter, then I go South Carolina, Kentucky, or that Cal Auburn game, whichever is more interesting.
Yeah. I heard you say Iowa State's your top choice for the week game.
Heck yeah.
Are you a masochist or something?
I get a little bit of that in me.
That is just every time I watch that game. I mean, the games are always close, always competitive, but
yeah,
they're so ugly. I mean, the play is those games. It seems like that game always gets decided by like a muff punt or a fumble or a safety or something like that.
Well, last weekend,
it's not visually, aesthetically pleasing football at all.
The game I wanted to see more than any other game last weekend was Notre Dame, Texas A&M. They played pretty much an Iowa State game.
I would say the athletes were a little bit higher caliber in that game.
Not much.
Then they're going to be in this one.
Iowa's got more NFL players than Texas A&M does right now.
Yeah, possibly.
But Iowa is a top 8 or 9 NFL producing school.
Yeah. And they produce them at all the same positions too. They're
defensive backs,
guards, tight ends, and
defensive backs.
Zone corner,
defensive backs in the NFL, and linebackers recently.
Oh, that's right, that too. So, not a whole lot of quarterbacks or receivers or running backs.
No,
that's for sure.
No.
All right,
Sean.
All right, so
thanks
always
a lot.
A pleasure.
Appreciate it.
See you tomorrow.
All right, let's keep it rolling here at the Voice of College Football. We will pick up the pace here. We got the real MVP on the line.
Hey, Mark, how are you doing this evening?
I am doing just fine. What's going on?
I was shocked with the BYU-SMU game. I saw the spread.
Okay.
Yeah, the spread shocked me. It was 12.5.
Yeah, it surprised me too.
Yeah, I was thinking this is a 50-50 game either way. I didn't know who was going to win it. In my opinion, these are average to below average teams, and they kind of looked like it on the field tonight. I mean,
they're no good. Yeah. I saw much of the game. Not impressed with these teams at all.
Yeah, Northwestern's one of those teams. Bad teams find a way to lose, Mark, and Northwestern fit that mold perfectly. They found a way to lose, Mark.
Yeah. They lose every year to Duke, though. They lost to them last year, and they turned out to be pretty good. So let's not give up on Northwestern. But, yeah, they shouldn't have lost that game. I sat down here, and Northwestern was up 3. There was about 10 minutes left, and they just got the ball back. And the way the game flow was going after that, from what I could tell, that Northwestern, it looked like they kind of blew that game.
Yeah, there was a questionable call in the fourth quarter, a fumble call that I believe it was ruled a fumble, then they overturned it with 1:30 to go. So
Okay.
I thought it was a fumble live watching it, but it was overturned. So you'll have to go back and look at that one, Mark. How come there's not a whole lot of hype and talk about the Kentucky-South Carolina game? I mean, everybody's just kind of looking over it. Like,
SEC
we're just
opener.
irrelevant.
It's an SEC opener. Absolutely. Kentucky comes in at 1-0. Both teams are 1-0 after huge wins over Southern Miss and Old Dominion. And I don't know.
Yeah, I know. I mean, listen, for us, Mark, this game matters a lot. For, we're not the Ohio States and Michigans, the elitist of the world. But, just for us plebs out here surviving on the streets, we're just trying to get by with our mediocrity.
Well, I should probably put the same tag on this game that I was talking in light of Tennessee, NC State, and Iowa State, that these games are bigger than they've ever been because we got a 12-team playoff, and this is Kentucky taking another step toward playoff consideration.
Yeah, Mark, and Vegas was really liking Kentucky. I mean, Mark, Kentucky, 10-point favorites I saw at one point. Outside of Vanderbilt, I don't know the last time Kentucky's been 10-point favorites against any SEC team.
Are they at home?
Yes, but still, Mark, it can be home, it can be away, it doesn't matter.
South Carolina.
I know, but still, Mark, I mean, Kentucky's not exactly, Georgia, Alabama here.
Yeah, but South Carolina, boy, they're just, I don't know what's happened to Shane Beamer and that team, and their quarterback situation's awful, and they're just not a very good team. So I think that's an appropriate line.
The only concern I have about is the last 2 years, Kentucky has been better than South Carolina, but we found ways to lose. +6 for South Carolina in the turnover department over the last 2 years, Mark. +6.
Yeah.
Not good. We've had quarterback injuries, I believe, both years. Will Levis's foot plagued us one year, and then Devin Leary, I think he was completely injured, but still played for most of the game, but you could tell he was just
How did Brock Vandergriff look last week?
Brock Vandergriff, when he looked elite when he had motion and stuff to disguise it, but he looked horrendous when he had none of the eye candy. Like, there was a throw where he threw it right. He just looked at his receiver, threw it, and a Southern Miss player had it in his hands for a pick six. But since they're Southern Miss, they dropped it because they're terrible. And, there was another interception that was kind of fluky where it was batted up in the air and picked off. But, I mean, it wasn't a terrible read or a terrible pass or anything. But he's got the Will Levis running style in him where he likes to truck people and hurt people. So if it's like a third and mid type situation, I think he can be able to stretch the chains 1 or 2 times this year and get us that extra first down. And I think that'll be really valuable for an Ole Miss type game. I don't think it'll matter against Georgia or Texas, but I think Ole Miss or Tennessee's who, if we want to make the playoffs at 9-3, those are one of the 2 teams we have to beat.
Or you're letting us know that Gavin Wimsatt might be starting a game or 2.
Potentially, Mark. Yeah, he took a lot of unnecessary contact. He was searching out for that contact. And it was kind of awesome to see, but I think they're going to tone it down. Not a slider, Mark. He does not like the slide.
Okay.
I would also like to...
Well, I was just going to say to Real that with Kentucky's recent history, although I've got great respect for Mark Stoops, they usually play these games kind of close. They've got a propensity of playing these MAC teams and those kind of teams and making it way too close. So I was just impressed that they just took care of business and wiped them out because, they had Eastern Kentucky 28-17 last year. They had a 31-23 game with Northern Illinois that was ugly a couple of years ago. They had a game with Chattanooga 28-23. This seems to bite them about, well, they don't lose them, but they just seem to have those kind of crappy looking games, and they were actually able to just kind of wipe out Southern Miss.
Right. What concerned me was during the first drive. It was hard with the weather delays and all that stuff to keep the game log in my mind because it was like super long delay. Then we played and abbreviated. Then they had an abbreviated halftime. It was just all a mess. But there was the first, first time Southern Miss had the ball, they converted 3 straight third downs, including a 3rd and 18. And that was a big problem for Kentucky. See, we're able to stop teams if it's 3rd and 1 and 3rd and 2, but we're unable to stop teams if it's 3rd and 18 or 3rd and 20. We're just like the Madden, the video game. If it's 3rd and long, we can't stop them. And I was worried that was coming back this year, but after that, we went 0 and Southern Miss went 0 and 6 in third downs. So that was a positive sign for Kentucky. I know it's just Southern Miss, but the fact we're able to stop teams on third down is good. How does South Carolina win this football game, Mark? Is there any way on earth they win this football game? Because they looked horrendous.
Well, you just told us how they're going to win this game like they have the last 2 years. But other than that, Kentucky's a roughly top 25 team in the country. Maybe not quite that good, and South Carolina's not close to that. So that's why Kentucky's a 10-point favorite, and they should be just fine unless they lose the turnover battle.
Right. And the final key thing I'll mention is we got our 5th offensive coordinator in 5 years, and he's doing something I've been wanting to do. They're doing jet sweeps with Barryon Brown just to, open up the perimeter a bit. And Barryon Brown, if anybody's played college football at 25, he's got 98 speed. So he's one of the fastest players in the country. So I believe eventually he'll break 1 or 2 of those this year. He had 3 punt returns for touchdown last year, or kickoff returns for touchdowns last year. So he's got that raw speed and stuff in him. And I think if we open up the perimeter with him, we'll be able to get more inside runs to be effective. And also Chip Trainum's out for this game for us, our running back 1.
Yep.
Oh, speaking of that, SEC was having injury reports for SEC versus SEC games, Mark.
Who's having that?
SEC versus SEC games. They're having injury reports every Wednesday, and then I believe 90 minutes or 60 minutes before kickoff.
Yeah, I think it's 90 minutes. I didn't know about the update midweek, though.
What do you think about that? Do you think that's an improvement on the game?
Well, I really don't know who's pushing this. I don't know if that's the media. I don't know why.
It's the commissioner.
It's the commissioner. Yeah,
it's stated as a rule. Every SEC versus SEC game, you got to have an injury report.
Okay. So I understand it's coming from him. I don't understand the motivation. I like it. It provides us with more information, but I don't understand how it serves the teams themselves. Like, I don't know from a league standpoint why you would do that. I think it's good. I like to have the information, but from a league standpoint that's doing everything right, they're the SEC. They don't need to accommodate anyone. Just watch our games. We can do whatever we want. We can treat you however we want. This is the way we've operated for 50 years. We pretty much do what we want, and everybody loves our games because they're the best football games. I don't know what the incentive to do that is, but I like it, but I don't understand the move.
I don't understand. Maybe there isn't some. I'm guessing integrity of the game is the reason they're doing it.
All right.
I'm guessing. But Mark, I'll talk to you about the biggest game in terms of brands. Not the most important, the biggest game, Texas, Michigan.
Yep.
If Texas is up 10 points at any point in the game, is it over?
Yeah, that's kind of how I'm thinking. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw Davis Warren play, and Mark, he doesn't look very good.
No, Michigan did not look good last week. But
right. Why didn't they get a quarterback?
Well, based on that performance, I have no idea. I don't know why they didn't get a quarterback, and who else? I put them with somebody. Oh, Clemson. I don't know why Clemson didn't get a quarterback. Well, we know why Clemson didn't, because they don't do that. They don't use that transfer portal. So those are the 2 teams in the country that have high expectations and much is expected, and they should have gone to get a transfer quarterback and failed to do so. On the other hand, USC knew that they had a quarterback and have proven to us that they had a quarterback, and they didn't need to go get one. So they made the wise decision, the right decision, and that's what Lincoln Riley does, at least at that position. He makes good decisions. But Michigan apparently didn't make a good decision. Although, again, I'm going to emphasize for everyone, don't be surprised. Like, I've not heard anybody, even Michigan fans. I've even heard all Michigan fans that I've heard. I'm not saying every Michigan fan out there, but the ones that I've heard from, including people that work here at the Voice of College Football, nobody's picking Michigan to win this game. I'm just saying, don't be surprised if Michigan is a different team tomorrow. Don't be surprised if they win this game like 24-20 because they found some offense just enough and their defense was elite and they win this game. They're at home. Don't be surprised.
Well, Mark, I'll fall for the same trap as I did last year. I'll be very surprised, Mark, because Texas to me's got the better team and the better coach. Outside of Michigan being at home and being the alleged defending national championship, Mark, I just don't see any reason to pick Michigan.
Okay. I understand based on everything but there is a reason that there was a term that became popular several years ago called overreaction, week 1 overreaction. That is a thing.
I understand, Mark, and maybe I'm doing a bit of it, but man, even if Texas gets 10-20% worse and Michigan gets 10-20% better, Texas just looks so good against Colorado State. I mean, they just completely wiped them out in all facets of the game. And I trust Ewers and I trust Sark, and I just don't trust Sharon Moore, and I just don't trust their quarterbacks.
Okay, I got you. It all makes sense. I'm just telling you what's happened repeatedly throughout history, and I'm also telling you that one key phrase in your statement about Texas is the team that they played last week.
Fair enough, Mark. Fair enough. I got 2 other things I'd like to ask you. We saw a Stallion sighting today. He's the now interim coach at some high school. What do you think about that? Do you think he's got any signs that he can give us of how good he's going to be?
Well, I'm questioning I will make a political statement of sorts if people can interpret what I'm about to say. I highly question all sorts of school systems across this country these days because the stuff that goes on at these school systems these days is, despicable and stupid. So it doesn't surprise me that the school system would hire Connor Stallions. They're morons. They're idiots. They should not be hiring Connor Stallions. That's just completely, it's so stupid on so many levels. And it's just bad PR. It's a bad decision that you hire someone of that is shown to have those kind of ethics. And this is the message you're sending to your students and so forth. So it's just I don't even know where it is. I assume it's in Michigan somewhere. I don't know. But that school system, unless they want to come on here and give me good reasons why they would hire such a person, like, I don't get that. And I don't believe in not forgiving people and giving them second chances and all that. But considering we just came off of this just 6 months ago, I don't think that's a smart move to make as a school system.
Well, Mark, I believe in forgiveness too, but the first thing you got to do is ask for forgiveness.
Yes. Yeah, there's accountability. That doesn't mean you just throw it out that doesn't mean I allow you to rip me off $100 multiple times over and over. And I just keep saying, oh, I forgive you, but I don't hold you accountable. And I'm not wise to your deception, like your lack of ethics. No, that's people have a lot of things misconstrued in this society. So yeah, I would not hire him. I don't get that. I'm sure there are plenty of capable, qualified people out there to hire.
Right, Mark, but how many of them have a Netflix documentary?
Hopefully not many.
Okay.
All
so
right,
you view that as a negative and not a positive. See, I was viewing it as a positive because everybody wants to be famous now. So I was viewing it.
Some Michigan fans are proud of it.
I tell you what, the courage it takes for that lawyer to say, you know what I think it is? I think the University of Ohio State may be involved in this. And it may be And it was the implication was it'd be Ryan Day's brother because he's a private investigator, Mark. Courage just to say that out loud is something that will always stick with me. It's kind of freeing because no matter what I say, I don't believe there's anything dumber than I can say than what that was said when that was said. So it's freeing in a way, Mark.
Well, it's up there.
Yes, it is, Mark. Final thing I'll say, just to, because I know it's your favorite topic. If you've looked at week 3, College Game Day may be headed to Kentucky, Mark.
Okay, for the Georgia game. Is that
Georgia, Kentucky. It's one of the probably 3 biggest games of the week, which is kind of sad.
Yeah, that is sad. Okay, we'll be looking out for that. Sure.
I know you're a big game day guy, so I thought I would mention that to you. First time in 17 years if it were to happen.
Sweet. All right, DeReal.
Yeah, see you, Mark.
Appreciate you being here. All right, yeah, College Game Day. I never understood that fascination. They show up and they do a show. I don't get it. Okay, it's a great show, or at least it used to be. It may still be. I haven't watched it in like 20 years. I was hanging out with a friend watching the LSU USC game, at least the first half, and he made some comment about College Game Day. Well, it was the week before that I watched the Georgia Tech Florida State game with a friend, and then so we saw the last couple minutes of College Game Day. Yes. And he made mention, I haven't seen this in 3 or 4 years. I said, I haven't watched College Game Day in 20 years. Anyway, yeah, I never understood the fascination of it's a great show, like sitting and watching it. Like, I have no issue with anyone who makes that part of your Saturday morning watching it. Absolutely. If that's what you want to do, watch College Game Day. But I never understood the big drama or hype over where they select to go. Like, if you're sitting in New York City and you're a college football fan, that you care that they decided to go to Columbus, Ohio instead of Chattanooga, Tennessee, or Knoxville, Tennessee. Like, I don't get it. I never understood that. All right, we've been on way too long. Let's wrap it up here. Creekwater.
Oh, what's up, Mark?
Not too much. How you doing?
Nah, good. It's okay. You don't get game day, man. It's like professional wrestling. Either you get it, or you're into it, or you're not. You know.
Well, it's not that I don't. No. It's not that I don't get it. I understand it's a good show, but who cares where they like? I don't understand the big fascination over where they select to go, and that's important. Like, if Ohio State never has game day come to the campus for the rest of the history of the school, are they going to be a worse football program? No, it's completely unimpactful.
Yeah, it's like people like, it's like Ohio State, Georgia, like they've got it so much. They don't get, like, for programs like Texas Tech, no one cares nationally, but for like the fans, it's a really big deal.
Bingo, you just hit on it. For the people at Texas Tech, it's a big deal. I get that, but for everybody else, I don't get it.
Yeah.
I don't get why just random college football fan is wondering, are they going to go to Texas Tech this week? Are they going to go to Knoxville? Or are they going to go to Seattle? Like, I just don't get it. Who cares? It's the same show. It's the same show. Maybe they'll do a different feature, but there's a bunch of people behind them, regardless of where they are. Like, it's the same show, regardless of where they set up.
I agree. It's like, some people don't care if, don't get that Undertaker fake body slam somebody. It's the same type of thing, in my opinion, either way, but I get what you're saying. Like, I'm an Oklahoma State fan. If game days come on multiple times, I went once, and I haven't been back, but I do find it cool. Like, I hope that they come to Oklahoma State, Utah, but like, I wouldn't break my heart if they didn't, type thing.
All righty. Any other reason you gave us a ring?
Yeah, I have a couple underrated games, like Baylor, Utah. Like, I think Utah should handle them, but like, this is a huge year for Dave Aranda. And Baylor, they didn't play anyone of significance, but they looked better than they would have last year, I think, in week 1. And I think that's a game that's kind of flying under the radar. Same with Oklahoma State, Arkansas. Like that game, I think I am a lot more nervous about that game right now than I was 10 days ago. Our Arkansas looked really good. Bobby Petrino is an offensive guru, so that game stresses me out. So those are two like under the radar games. And the one final thing, I've never seen anything as strange as the Michigan guy, coach Monroe or whatever his name is, not having a contract. I've never seen anything like that in college football.
Yeah, so I did not look into that this week. I just saw what his comments were about everything's good, and I didn't look into that in regards to his contract status.
I mean, Pat McAfee kind of put him on the spot today on his show, just straight up ask him. And you could tell he got flustered. Like he was flustered with his answer. He kind of started rambling, and then Pat kind of saved him. Uh, it's like he's still an interim coach, is what it feels like to me. Really, like if you if you were that worried about losing him or him leaving, and you want a big buyout, you want to like lock him down and all that, like he could just decide tomorrow he's not gonna be Michigan's coach. Like so, it feels like he's on like an interim coach right now.
Yeah, again, I don't know what the situation is there. I didn't see him on Pat McAfee, nor let's see. So yeah, we've got this story here from Bleacher Report. All right, Sharon Moore, blah blah blah, still hasn't officially signed his contract. So they've offered him a contract, it sounds like, but he has not signed it. The two sides are working through it, even as more coaches. Well, this has happened. It's rare, but I know that there have been cases of this happening where there's just kind of a good faith measure that they're still working on a contract and figuring it out. But they've had since when they named him head coach in January. So they've had a
Wild.
good 8-9 months to work
Yeah.
on this.
I mean, Lincoln Riley just signed his contract in 48 hours when he left OU. Like
Well, he was leaving somewhere to go somewhere. You don't just have a work without a contract if you are leaving somewhere to go somewhere else. But if you're already working somewhere and your contract expires and your title changes, then you may stay there and figure it out. He's been working at Michigan for a long time.
yes, that's true. It's just maybe I'm just being conspiratorial here, but like he has no reason not to set himself up with like generational wealth and sign like because Michigan, if they were offering him a contract, it wouldn't be like some low level deal.
Well, it's
It
5
would,
years for 30 million according to this article.
yeah, like oh, it's one of the top probably 10, 15 head coaches in the nation for a guy that's never been a head coach.
Okay, well,
Uh,
it says here that Moore signed a memorandum of understanding for 5 years, 30 million when Michigan hired him in January of 24. It is something the Wolverines have used before, as former head coach Jim Harbaugh signed one in 2021. So that was after they cut his pay and all that other business
when he
before
was on the
officially
hot
signing a
seat.
new contract 9 months later. So they went 9 months without Harbaugh having a contract.
And that
So
was when Harbaugh, people thought
sure.
he might be fired.
Yeah, well, that it worked out pretty well. So
Yeah.
maybe it's a condition in which they don't know if they want to keep him around, and he's going to have to prove himself this season.
That's what I like it's the interim thing. That's what
Okay.
I really think. And it's
Well,
kind of it's fascinating to watch just as an outsider. And it's a tough spot to be in for a guy that's Michigan's a good team, but they got they probably are worse like at every position comparatively to last year, and it's just a tough
mm,
spot.
yeah, yeah, I can't disagree with you there. But they've only played one game. Maybe linebacker might be better, but yeah, they're generally worse at all the other positions. But they did win a national championship with
Yeah,
all those positions. Um, and then I would just think that they're going to take this care of this one way or the other before National Signing Day in December. So after the season, sometime between the last weekend of November, or if they play in the Big Ten championship game the next weekend, they'll take care of it sometime between then. But I would think they would need to have this resolved by National Signing Day, or they're going to have issues signing players.
I agree, and I agree with your timeline unless he's 8-4.
Well, if he's 8. All right, my apologies on that one. Click the wrong button. So anyway, yeah, Sharon Moore, they'll figure out what to do with him. But yeah, they've done this before. All right, man. Anything else? Oh, I think we lost him. All right, my apologies there. We got Jackson, who's going to give us a closing line, and we'll take off from here.
Here we go. How you doing tonight, Mark?
I'm doing well, Jackson. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Just saw a crazy Friday with Jordan Love, hopefully recovering well from his right leg injury after a huge hit in that final drive against the Eagles in Brazil, and some low-scoring games in BYU-SMU, Northwestern, Duke, and overtime, and Indiana breaking records all over the place. I mean, Jeffrey's pretty happy about that tonight for sure.
Yep, absolutely.
Oh yeah. But I will say though, it's going to be huge seeing Texas, Michigan. And I saw where somebody today on College Football Report, that's the website where they said this is going to be the game that makes a difference as to whether Texas is truly back or not, because we don't know. Like, are they truly back or no?
Well, I think that's kind of an ignorant statement myself. I don't. It's one game. They could lose this game, and like they just went to the playoff last year. They won the Big 12. They went to the playoff. They played Washington down to the wire. They're going to most likely lose a game this year. So them going to Ann Arbor and losing a game doesn't show that they're not back, and them winning against a Michigan team that could go 8-4 doesn't show that they are back. So I don't agree with that statement.
Yeah, I mean, it's like we're in a 12-team playoff, not a 4-team playoff or the 2-team era. So it's like there's that. And I'm thinking about how like we're in the underrated games where we got like Kansas State, Tulane. That's going to be like a difference maker for Tulane if they can beat Kansas State at noon Eastern time, because we don't know who's going to be that group of 5 team that gets in the playoffs. And it could be Tulane if they beat Kansas State on Saturday.
Yes, of course, like they did 2 years ago.
Oh, yeah. That was an underrated game in all college football. I mean, a lot of people are definitely wishing they had ESPN Plus for that one. I mean, I'm just like, not too crazy about ESPN Plus, but you know what? I'm not missing out on games like that. So
there you go.
And it was funny though. You talked a little bit about like not too worried about like game day. I remember like somebody was saying to me like, "Why don't you talk about what Pat McAfee and Nick Saban were doing on college game?" It's like, no, Crimson Tide Live is not about the latest moment of Pat McAfee taking his shirt off every 5 seconds. That's not how this works.
Well,
so, yeah.
Everybody's into something different. That's Pat McAfee's a big star in this game. People love him or hate him, but and that's what makes somebody popular. They're the love and the hate combination.
That's true. Like it's funny though, because like he gets pretty wild, but I mean it's it's like, oh, what if game doesn't go to Alabama? It's like doesn't make a difference to me. It's like I really don't care. Like,
yeah, a lot of people do, and I'm not criticizing it. I just don't understand it. But there's a lot of things I don't understand.
Yeah, but it's going to be interesting to see what goes on Saturday. It's going to be a pretty wild one. I know week 3 looks a little bit sloppy, but that doesn't mean it's going to be a god awful week. When there's sloppy weeks coming ahead next week, for example, that means upsets are coming. Kind of like with Game of Thrones, winter is coming. Well, upsets are coming. Who knows? There we go. And we could see some upsets as well. Week 2. I mean, it's funny though. Oregon's never beaten Boise State in the series history. That's the funny thing. And we saw with SMU TCU, not SMU TCU, SMU BYU. Man, staying up at 1 a.m. can do a lot to you, but it's fun. So
good stuff. All right, Jackson. Appreciate you being here, man.
Good night and sleep well, and tune in for the CFB Bets $99 tier, especially for that under the radar pick.
Appreciate everything you do.
Probably Marshall.
Thanks, Jackson. Good stuff. All right. Appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. When the laptop shuts down and the monitor goes, we know that it's time to pull the plug. All right. Thanks for being here. On Saturday, we got post-game shows all over the place with all the teams that we cover. Miami, Clemson, Ohio State, Michigan, Iowa, Nebraska, West Virginia, Texas, Alabama, USC, Oregon post-game shows on Saturday. With USC, it's on Sunday. I will be doing instant analysis of the 2 games that I focus on at noon, 3:30 Eastern, and prime time, and then back here at the same time about 11:30 Eastern on Saturday night. Appreciate it. This edition of the Voice of College Football, of course, was brought to you by Kyle Pickett. So thank you for sponsoring the show. Kyle, if you're still with us, thank you so much for your support. And we will leave you with this. Speaking of money and income and revenue, there are certainly opportunities out there for you. College football is even more exciting with some action on the line. And the games are even better when you're cashing in. And the Voice of College Football is the place to be to get the greatest value. Let's start with my picks. 75% against the money line, 58% against the spread. I've got a 40-year track record. In fact, in 2023, at $100 played per game, you would have netted over $9,300. And guess what? I'm just the warm-up act. Steve Merrill, our ace in the hole, show stopper from Wager Talk. 6 years with the Voice of College Football, over 30 years in the industry. Steve gives us analysis on all the big games, but you can't miss Steve's weekly Under the Radar pick, which went 21-5 against the spread the last 2 seasons. I repeat, 21-5 against the spread. You also get picks from some of our top analysts here at the Voice of College Football, including Steve Dace and Matt Zemek. Become a YouTube channel member or Patreon member for just $99 per month. Go to the main channel on YouTube, click join, and select the betting tier. Do the same thing on Patreon. Make 2024 a winner now.